Chapter 3751. Even if he didn't plan to kill them, he had to at least come up with a plan to suppress their points for the next part of the exam. After all, the current point ranking was too much of an eyesore. Looking at Lin Yi and the others chatting casually, Meng Jueguang pinched his chin and smiled coldly. I'll let you guys be happy for a while. I didn't have time to deal with you guys before, so I let you guys take advantage of the loophole. Now, you guys will be crying. Putting aside the troublesome Lin Yi, if it was just Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, these two newbies, Meng Jueguang didn't even care about them. In his eyes, it was a piece of cake to deal with these two. According to the usual practice, after all the newbies from the three pavilions had gathered, the head of the pavilion, Hu Yunfeng, would appear and announce the rules of the next part of the exam. Just like the first pressure resistance exam, the location of the third part of the exam wasn't the welcome pavilion, but the Hall of Elixirs. But more accurately speaking, the third part wasn't in the Hall of Elixirs. The head of the pavilion, Hu Yunfeng, brought all the newbies to the Hall of Elixirs as a formality, allowing everyone to pick some elixir seeds and bring them back to cultivate. As everyone knew, any practitioner in the world of practitioners had to deal with all sorts of elixirs. The only difference was how many elixirs they had. Some people had a good background and could eat all sorts of elixirs like food. Some people didn't and could only save up resources, exchanging them for elixirs at critical moments. Some people were like Lin Yi, an elixir refiner, and could make all sorts of elixirs by themselves. In short, no matter what kind of person they were, they would need all sorts of elixirs in their long life of practicing. Otherwise, in this day and age where the qi was getting thinner and thinner, it was unrealistic to rely on one's own hard work to break through. Even if they succeeded, that was only for the extremely talented few. 99% of the people couldn't do without elixirs. But in order to make elixirs, other than a specialized elixir refiner, the most important thing was all sorts of common and uncommon elixirs. If they didn't have all sorts of elixirs as elixirs, even an elixir god like Zhang Liju wouldn't be able to do it. However, any spiritual herb was a heavenly treasure. Even the most common and low-grade spiritual herb was only relative to other spiritual herbs. Compared to other plants, it was still an extremely rare and precious item. It was impossible to collect a large amount of them, not to mention other rare items like the heart-devouring exquisite grass. Naturally, the artificial method of planting spirit herbs came into being. However, although spiritual medicine was also a plant, it had harsh requirements for the environment it grew in. It was far more difficult to compare with ordinary plants and flowers. Even if there were cultivators who spent a lot of effort to take care of it, its survival rate would always remain at an extremely low level. Moreover, its growth cycle was generally very long. Often, after working hard for dozens of years, the slightest carelessness would cause them to wither and die, and all their efforts would go down the drain. However, after tens of thousands of years of experience, the current cultivation world of Heavenly Island had concluded a set of very mature cultivation methods for spiritual herbs. Not only was the survival rate much higher than before, but with the addition of artificial ripening methods, even the growth cycle was greatly shortened. Therefore, many common spiritual herbs could be cultivated on a large scale to ensure their supply. Of course, this was only limited to some common spiritual herbs. Most of the special spiritual herbs were extremely rare, and there was no experience in cultivation. Therefore, their survival rate was still at an extremely low level. Otherwise, if they could be cultivated on a large scale, they would have been widely planted. They would not be called rare spiritual herbs. Looking at the entire North Island of Heavenly Island, the most authoritative place in the cultivation of spiritual herbs was naturally the Alchemy Hall. This time, Hu Yunfeng brought the newcomers from the three pavilions here to let them collect the seeds of various spiritual herbs. Then, they would be brought back to their respective caves for cultivation. This was the third round of the newcomer assessment, the spiritual herb trial. Like the law enforcement hall, the Alchemy Hall was the most famous independent department besides the three pavilions on the North Island. It was one of the few independent departments that could be heard by everyone. Compared to the cold but extremely intimidating law enforcement hall, the Alchemy Hall was built against the mountain and welcomed everyone. Whether it was the architectural layout or the flow of people, It was obviously much more friendly and easygoing than the law enforcement hall. At least, it would not make people feel uncomfortable. After all, strictly speaking, other than being the independent department of the three pavilions and responsible for the supply of elixirs to the three pavilions, the Alchemy Hall was also a large business organization similar to the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Don't forget, Senior Brother Ku Bai was still wondering if he should gather 200 pieces of spiritual jade and come to the Alchemist Hall to help him refine the Foundation Establishment barrier-breaking pill. Every year, just by collecting fees for refining elixirs for others, the Alchemy Hall could earn an astronomical amount of wealth. In addition, the Alchemy Hall also cooperated with large businesses like the Hong Chamber of Commerce to sell all kinds of elixirs in bulk. This was another astronomical amount of wealth. Adding the two together, the Alchemy Hall was definitely one of the wealthiest departments of the three pavilions. Even the Spirit Jade Hall, which was responsible for mining spiritual jade, was at most on par with it. It was also because of such a huge amount of wealth that the Alchemy Hall could support the collection of all kinds of rare spiritual herbs and the recruitment of many alchemists. Otherwise, if it could not do these two things, the Alchemy Hall would only exist in name. Under Hu Yunfeng's lead, the group of newcomers from the three pavilions followed the mountain's terrain and climbed up the stairs. After passing through layers of antique buildings, what appeared in front of the newcomers was a stretch of enchanting lush greenery. Even from hundreds of feet away, they could smell the refreshing fragrance of spiritual herbs. This was the most important source of spiritual herbs for the Alchemy Hall, the spirit medicine nursery that it had organized and developed. It covered an area of tens of acres and expended a large amount of manpower and resources. The Alchemy Hall had cultivated over 100 types of spiritual herbs here. In order to ensure an adequate supply of spiritual energy, there were even piles of high-grade spiritual jade full of spiritual energy on the ground. In a natural environment, there was no need to deliberately do so for normal spiritual herbs to grow. The spirit medicine nursery clearly did so to increase its output. If it was left to grow naturally, there would not be many spiritual herbs growing in this small area of tens of acres. As far as the eye could see, not only were there all kinds of priceless spiritual herbs, there were also spiritual jade everywhere. It was a soul-stirring sight. The newcomers from the three pavilions, who had never seen such a scene, could not help but swallow their saliva in unison. Chapter 3752. After seeing this scene, even Linny felt a wave of admiration. In a place like this, spirit jades were even more worthless than in Spirit Jade Hall. After all, even though the Spirit Jade Hall produced spirit jades, they still treated them as if they were spirit jades. Every place was heavily guarded. However, in the spirit medicine nursery, spirit jades were tossed around like stones. Moreover, it seemed that the supervision wasn't strict. They didn't treat these spirit jades as treasures at all. The only purpose of their existence was to release spirit chi to serve these spirit herbs. That was all. But other than being surprised, Lin Yi didn't have any greedy thoughts. Although with his qualifications, as long as he had the chance to come here, stealing some spirit jade would be a piece of cake. But doing this kind of thing too often would cause problems. If Lin Yi wanted to earn a large amount of spirit jade in a short period of time, it was obvious that concocting elixirs would be faster. He could just concoct an ultimate-level foundation-breaking pill, and he would be able to earn thousands of spirit jade in one go. It was much more reliable than this kind of small-scale stealing. Of course, if he really wanted to sell elixirs, there was still some risk in using Lin Er's identity. If it wasn't necessary, the cautious Lin Yi wouldn't do this. And even with Lin Er's hidden identity, he couldn't sell large amounts of elixirs so frequently. He would definitely be targeted by people with ulterior motives, and it wouldn't be worth it. What Lin Yi needed to do was to raise his level, practice, and fight for a chance to go to Middle Island and meet Zhang Liju as soon as possible. After the newcomers waited for a while, the manager of the Spirit Herb Nursery finally arrived. He was a middle-aged man with extremely gentle lines, and his movements made this gentleness even more obvious. In the words of the common world, this kind of gentle man was actually a sissy. What made Lin Yi slightly surprised was that he didn't see Su Lingcheng's figure this time, like in the previous two rounds. In the previous two rounds, This young master had personally come to supervise every round in order to kill him. It seemed that it was indeed like what Li Zhengming had said. Su Lingchong, Meng Jueguang, and the others had temporarily given up on the idea of directly dealing with him. Instead, they retreated in order to advance. They were prepared to figure out his strength first before killing him. After exchanging a few pleasantries with Hu Yunfeng, the Spirit Medicine Nursery's chief steward immediately ordered someone to bring a box over. Using a voice so gentle that it gave people goosebumps, he began to explain the specific rules of the assessment to the rookies. However, although Sissy's voice made people's scalps tingle, there was something good about it. It was very detailed, allowing the rookies to understand it thoroughly. It wouldn't be too blurry. Newcomers, there are 40 types of common or uncommon elixir seeds in this box. Oh, I'm sorry, the seeds are still in the breeding room. These are just labels for you to pick from. According to the rules of the newcomer assessment, each of you will need to randomly pick at least 10 types of spiritual herb seeds, one for each type. If you're willing, you can even take all 40 of them. At the same time, I'll give each of you a seed cultivation vessel for you to bring back to plant and cultivate. When planting and cultivating elixir seeds, other than having an environment that is compatible with their habits, there are two key factors that determine whether they can successfully grow. One is to ensure sufficient spiritual energy, which is the most basic requirement for their survival. Two is to infuse vital energy at a fixed time, every day to accelerate their ripening. Not only can this make up for the lack of spiritual energy, it can also greatly shorten their growth cycle. Otherwise, even if you endure for a few years, you might not be able to see them germinate. Generally speaking, if everything goes well, they'll be able to grow seedlings and survive in 15 to 20 days. As for how to infuse vital energy into the elixir seeds, I'll look for the senior brother in charge of this in the Spirit Medicine Nursery to demonstrate and explain to you. A Heavenly Tao expert was different from the previous Heaven rank experts. Above the Heavenly Tao, one could release vital energy. This was also the reason why he could release vital energy from other acupoints. If he could do it, so could others. It just depended on whether everyone was willing to do it. He might be able to recover in an instant, but if others wasted their physical strength and vital energy, they might need a few days to recover. Furthermore, if they overdraft their physical strength and vital energy, they might even drop a level. So, when they heard that they still had to infuse vital energy, most of the newcomers felt their hearts ache. What you have to pay attention to is that once you use your vital energy to accelerate the ripening of the elixir seeds until they germinate and completely survive, you have to ensure an adequate supply of vital energy every day. Otherwise, because the growth mechanism has been artificially altered, it'll be like a lack of spiritual energy and will quickly wither and die. Of course, the survival rate of elixir seeds isn't considered high. Dying is a very normal thing. In fact, even the disciples of the pill hall can't guarantee a 100% survival rate. For newcomers like you, being able to successfully cultivate 5 seedlings out of 10 elixir seeds is already considered a relatively good result. Your points for this round of assessment will be calculated based on the number of elixir seeds that survive. Within the assessment period of 3 months, as long as you successfully cultivate a stalk of elixir seedling, you will be able to obtain 3 points. Failing to cultivate won't deduct any points. But don't think that you can choose as many elixir seeds as you like. Because before that, every time you take away an elixir seed, 1 point will be deducted first. In other words, if you take away all 40 elixir seeds now, 40 points will be deducted first. If you can't cultivate more than 14 elixir seedlings in the next 3 months, not only will you not be able to obtain any points in this round of assessment, you will even have the points that you painstakingly earned in the previous 2 rounds deducted instead. However, if you have the ability to cultivate all 40 elixir seedlings, you will be able to directly obtain 120 points. Even if the previous 40 points are deducted, you will still be able to earn a net profit of 80 points. Isn't that very tempting? Unfortunately, that's impossible. Even the best elixir planter in our Spirit Medicine Nursery can't cultivate all 40 elixir seeds in 3 months. So, I advise you to be more realistic and act within your means. Otherwise, if your points are deducted, it won't be worth it. Then, we can start drawing lots to choose our seeds. Newcomers, do your best. Chapter 3753. The newcomers had been informed beforehand that the third round of the trial of spiritual herbs would take up to 3 months, so the fourth round would begin in 3 days. The 2 rounds would be held at the same time, so it was very likely that the newcomers would be exhausted. If they were hot-headed and chose too many seeds, then they would not be able to guarantee a daily supply of vital energy. It was very likely that the tragedy of having their points deducted would occur, just as the sissy had said. Therefore, even the confident newcomers from the Soaring Sky Pavilion were extremely cautious. On average, they only chose around 10 spiritual herb seeds, and the most of them did not exceed 20. Even Kong Ming Ming, the popular candidate who was born an alchemist, only chose 20 seeds despite having such a unique advantage. After the Soaring Sky Pavilion, the old men from the Mysterious Pavilion, who were even more experienced, naturally would not make any stupid choices. On average, they chose between 10 and 20 seeds. As for the newcomers from the Blue Cloud Pavilion, they were the weakest and the most lacking in confidence. On average, they only chose the minimum of 10 spiritual herb seeds. If not for the rules, they would have chosen even less. Although people like Xiao Ran might not lose to the newcomers from the other 2 pavilions in terms of strength, it should not be forgotten that cultivating spiritual herb seeds not only required a large amount of vital energy, but also a large amount of spiritual energy. If the cave abode did not have enough spiritual energy, it would be useless no matter how rich one's vital energy was. The spiritual herb seeds would still wither and die. As for Xiao Ran's second cave abode at the foot of the mountain, although it was considered not bad among the newcomers from the Blue Cloud Pavilion, it could not be compared to the caves of the newcomers from the other 2 pavilions. Even the worst cave abode had a higher concentration of spiritual energy than his second cave abode at the foot of the mountain. Under such circumstances, choosing only 10 spiritual herb seeds was clearly a wise move. This was because with the poor conditions of the newcomers from the Blue Cloud Pavilion, it was very likely that they would not even be able to cultivate these 10 spiritual herb seeds. If they chose too many, wouldn't they be digging their own graves? Rather than foolishly daydreaming and fantasizing about how many points they could obtain in this round, it was better to think about how they could avoid having their points deducted. This was more realistic and wise. While the other newcomers were lining up to draw seeds, Lin Yi was at the end of the line, silently observing the 40 spiritual herb seeds provided by the Spirit Medicine Nursery. One of them made his eyes light up. Heart-devouring exquisite grass. Among the 40 spiritual herb seeds, there was actually a heart-devouring exquisite grass. Even though the sissy manager had said so earlier, he'd already said that there were some common ones and some uncommon ones among the 40 seeds. But he didn't dare imagine that there would be a seed of the heart-devouring exquisite grass among them. After all, in terms of rarity, the value and rarity of the heart-devouring exquisite grass was definitely much higher than other ordinary spiritual medicine seeds. To Lin Yi, it was like a pie that had fallen from heaven. Lin Yi's heart heated up. He just reached Foundation Establishment early phase peak not too long ago, but he was planning ahead. He only needed a bit more time to stabilize his strength, and he'd be ready to break through to Foundation Establishment mid-phase. To Foundation Established, the Foundation Establishment Pill. The heart-devouring exquisite grass was the key to obtaining the heart-devouring exquisite grass. Last time, he'd gone through a lot of trouble on the outskirts of the back mountain, risking the fatal danger of being hunted by the golden-eyed eagles, and finally managed to get one from the cliff. He knew that if he wanted to get another one, he'd have to rack his brain to think of a way. Not to mention whether he could find another in the back mountain. Even if there was one, he would not be able to enter with his current identity. After all, the back mountain was protected by layers of restrictions. Without the permission of the back mountain hall, nobody could enter the back mountain as they pleased. Lin Yi, the newcomer of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, was no exception. Who would have thought that the precious item that he might not be able to obtain even after racking his brains would actually deliver itself to him during the assessment mission? However, the heart-devouring exquisite grass was indeed among the 40 spiritual herb seeds. It would not be easy for Lin Yi to obtain it. His only right was to report the number of seeds and draw the corresponding number from the box. In other words, unless Lin Yi reported a total of 40 spiritual herb seeds, he would not be able to obtain it. Otherwise, he might miss the opportunity to obtain the heart-devouring exquisite grass seeds that could only be discovered by luck. However, in a situation where all the other newcomers only reported 20 seeds, if he reported 40 seeds, unless he was a publicly acknowledged idiot, he would definitely be suspected. As for Lin Yi, although he had always been a maverick, from his various performances, especially after consecutively obtaining 2 God-level full marks, in the eyes of others, he was not an idiot at all. Seeing that the newcomers in front of him were about to finish drawing their seeds and it would soon be his turn, Lin Yi could not help but frown as he felt a headache coming on. In front of him was a heaven-sent opportunity to obtain the heart-devouring exquisite grass seeds. He definitely did not want to miss it. After all, if he missed it, it would be extremely difficult to obtain the heart-devouring exquisite grass in the future. Even if he racked his brains to sneak into the back mountain, he might not be able to successfully find the heart-devouring exquisite grass. If it really did not work, he could only shock the world and choose all 40 spiritual herb seeds. Lin Yi secretly clenched his teeth. The heart-devouring exquisite grass was the key to refining the foundation-building pill, and the foundation-building pill was directly related to whether or not his strength could increase rapidly. With this, he would be able to deal with all kinds of unpredictable dangers in the future. In comparison, even if he was suspected, he could only go all out and not care so much. When the time came, he would just use his identity as a pill master to brush them off. Even if these people suspected him, they should not be able to link it to the foundation-building pill. The risk was not too big, and it was still better than missing the opportunity to obtain the heart-devouring exquisite grass seeds. When everyone in front of him had finished drawing their seeds, it was Lin Yi's turn. He was already the last one. Meng Jueguang, who was in charge of maintaining order among the newcomers in the Blue Cloud Pavilion, glanced at Lin Yi and said, "Junior brother Lin Yi, tell me, how many spiritual herb seeds do you plan to submit?" Although he really wanted to get rid of Lin Yi, this thorn that had repeatedly opposed him, he still had to maintain the demeanor of a senior brother in charge in such a public place. Moreover, this assessment was basically presided over by the people of the Spirit Medicine Nursery. If Su Lingchong did not appear, Meng Jueguang alone would not be able to talk to these people. Naturally, he would not be able to obstruct them. Even if he wanted to create trouble for Lin Yi, he would not have the opportunity to do so. He could only obediently follow the procedures. Chapter 3754. Even if he couldn't kill him that way, he could use the opportunity to screw him over and make his points drop like crazy. Maybe Ming Tong could even overtake him, and that would be something to be happy about. You're our Clear Cloud Pavilion's #1 new disciple. No matter what, you should at least register a little more to bring honor to our Clear Cloud Pavilion. Meng Jueguang's face was full of righteousness as he spoke. Heh, you guys might not know this, but Bro Lin Yi was already an elixir refiner back in the common world. He has a thorough understanding of the properties of these elixirs. He's a true expert. Getting 20 to 30 pills is nothing to him. It's already a waste of his abilities. I think it's no problem for him to get more. Kang Xiaoming saw the situation and helped to flatter him. With all the conflicts he had with Lin Yi, he wouldn't let go of a chance like this that could put Lin Yi in a difficult position. After he said that, the other newbies in Blue Cloud Pavilion went into an uproar. They only knew that Lin Yi was strong, but they didn't expect him to be a refiner. Although the status of alchemists in the cultivation world had always been considered high, because most of their energy was devoted to alchemy, and their strength was mostly improved by taking various elixirs, their strength was generally weaker than other experts of the same level. Of course, there were exceptions to everything. Dan Gajong Liju wasn't just someone who stood at the peak of refiners, he was also extremely strong, not any weaker than the other giants of Sky-class Island. What the newbies didn't expect was that Lin Yi, who stood in front of them, was a monster as well. Not only was he strong enough to crush masters of the same level, but he was also a rare refiner. Although his level was far from being on the same level as the Dan Gajong Liju, but compared to the newbies of the 3 pavilions, he was already a powerful existence. All of a sudden, all the newbies looked at Lin Yi with even more envy, jealousy, and hatred. Damn, so you're a refiner. You're a refiner. We can't waste such a great opportunity. We've already gotten 2 full marks. It'd be weird if we don't try, right? I think 30 is too little. Just because of your reputation as a pretentious newbie, you have to aim for full marks no matter what. Otherwise, it would be too degrading. Meng Tong heard this and immediately echoed in surprise. To him, if Lin Yi did not make a fatal mistake, then he would not be able to surpass Lin Yi in the subsequent rounds of the assessment. He could only be stepped on by Lin Yi. Only a test like the elixir trial that could deduct points could help him close the gap quickly, or even overtake the others. Of course, this was all based on the premise that Lin Yi was hot-headed and made a huge mistake. If Lin Yi were to honestly report 10 elixir seeds like the other rookies, he would have no chance at all. Just by relying on the huge advantage accumulated in the previous 2 rounds, he was already able to defeat him. A group of people began to flatter and ridicule him. Lin Yi glanced at them with a faint smile. This was a classic tactic of flattery, but it was just as well. Without the help of these people, it would be really hard for him to ask for 40 pills. But now, it was only logical. Junior brother Lin, you should be careful and just say 10. This thing is not easy to get, and it can easily affect the 4th round of the assessment. It will be very strenuous. Don't listen to these people's bewitchment, Senior brother Ku Bai reminded him in a low voice. Lin Yi nodded knowingly and gave the other party a reassuring look. Then, he walked to the front and faced the Spirit Medicine Nursery's manager. Since everyone is so supportive of me, there's no reason for me to disappoint everyone. So, I'll just say 40. Actually, Kang Xiaoming is right. I wanted to say 80. Kang Xiaoming said calmly. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd was in an uproar. Not to mention senior brother Ku Bai and the others who were on Lin Yi's side. Even Meng Jueguang and Kang Mingming, who had been constantly mocking him, were all stunned. Could it be that Lin Yi was really so easily provoked? Just because he was casually mocked by a few words, he chose all 40 seeds like an idiot? An 80 at that? You really live up to your title as a pretentious newcomer with your pretentious act. Meng Tong was also secretly delighted. He had great hopes. The sissy manager of the Spirit Medicine Nursery could not help but cover his mouth with his hand. He sized up Lin Yi in surprise and said, "Are you sure?" When he introduced the rules previously, he had already made it clear that even the most proficient disciple in planting spiritual herbs would not be able to nurture 40 spiritual herb seeds within 3 months. The survival rate could not be guaranteed. As a newcomer, even if this Lin Yi was an alchemist who was more familiar with the habits of spiritual herbs, he chose all 40 seeds in one go. This was simply thinking that he had too many points and wanted to take the opportunity to harm himself. One must know that although pill masters frequently came into contact with spiritual medicines, but ultimately, this was a completely different matter from spiritual medicine planters. To put it bluntly, alchemists were like chefs. Although they came into contact with all kinds of vegetables and ingredients every day and could make good dishes, if they were asked to plant vegetables because of this, that was simply a fraud. How could cooking and planting vegetables be the same thing? Kang Mingming was the most popular new disciple in the Soaring Sky Pavilion. He was also an alchemist, but he only dared to choose 20 seeds. Wasn't he courting death by announcing 40 seeds in one go? Moreover, they were about to enter the 4th round of assessment at the same time? I'm sure. Lin Yi nodded his head affirmatively, completely ignoring the strange expressions of everyone present. This time, even the sissy manager of the Spirit Medicine Nursery had nothing to say. He had already kindly given Lin Yi a chance to back out, but Lin Yi refused to repent. Thus, there was nothing he could do. He could only nod his head and ask someone to prepare the spiritual herb seeds for Lin Yi. Actually, he did not know Lin Yi at all. Whether Lin Yi lived or died had nothing to do with him. He only felt pity for these spiritual herb seeds. Although they were cultivated in batches by the pill hall and the cost was not too high, they were still spiritual herb seeds. If they were cultivated well, they would become real spiritual herbs. However, if they were given to a newcomer like Lin Yi who overestimated himself, there would not be many that could survive. However, the newcomer assessment in the welcoming pavilion this time was an important measure approved by the Elders Guild. As the manager of the Spirit Medicine Nursery, no matter how much his heart ached for these spiritual herb seeds, He could only pinch his nose and cooperate. As they watched Lin Yi receive the 40 sealed spiritual herb seeds, Meng Jueguang and Kang Mingming looked at each other, their faces full of sarcasm. It seemed that this pretentious newcomer really thought that he was invincible after getting full marks for 2 God-level assessments. He dared to jump into any trap. Chapter 3755. In fact, after the previous incident of exchanging spiritual jades, whether it was Meng Jueguang or Meng Tong, they both came to the conclusion that although Lin Yi's strength was superb, his IQ was really not high. He was just lucky and had some strength. However, if he could make use of his IQ, then Lin Yi was really not difficult to deal with. On the other hand, Kang Mingming was a little surprised. It was reasonable to say that Lin Yi was not such a stupid existence in the secular world. Why did he start to become so reckless when he came to Heaven Stage Island? Could it be that the heaven and earth spiritual chi was too abundant and made him dizzy? Pretentious newbie, we are looking forward to your God-level performance of getting 3 full marks in a row. Don't let us down. Of course, if the entire team is wiped out and 40 points are deducted, that would also be a good story, right? Anyway, you have a lot of points, so just treat it as showing off your style. Meng Tong couldn't help but chuckle and tease. In his opinion, Lin Yi took the initiative to court death this time. Even if he was an alchemist, it was impossible for him to not fall after registering to choose all 40 spiritual medicine seeds. The only difference was how many points he would lose. Although it was not very realistic to let Lin Yi's 40 spiritual medicine seeds be wiped out, if God opened his eyes and let him lose 20 to 30 spiritual medicine seeds, it was very possible. In this way, at least 20 to 30 points would be deducted from Lin Yi this time. And if he, Meng Tong, could only guarantee to get 10 points this time, then the huge difference of 33 points accumulated in the previous 2 rounds could be made up, and he could even achieve a reversal. It was simply awesome. Brother Meng Tong, you are thinking too much. No matter what, Lin Yi is also an alchemist. How can he be wiped out? Kang Mingming pretended to be righteous and said seriously, with his ability, cultivating 3 or 4 spiritual medicine seeds is absolutely not a problem at all, but more than that is a little difficult. After all, the 4th round of assessment is coming up. He is under a lot of pressure as the first to stand out. A person's strength is limited. You have to be understanding. Meng Jueguang nodded and said, what junior brother Kang said is very reasonable. Junior brother Lin Yi got 2 full marks in a row. He's the top newcomer of our Blue Cloud Pavilion. Everyone else should learn from him. The 4th assessment round is a rare opportunity to learn from each other. This kind of opportunity to challenge an expert is very rare. Don't let it go so easily. The group of Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples that had pledged their allegiance to him all agreed loudly. Although Lin Yi's existence was no longer on the same level in their eyes, it was human nature to be jealous. After all, they were all new disciples of Clear Cloud Pavilion. Why is it that you, Lin Yi, can be in the limelight, but us ordinary rookies can't? Next, they would have the opportunity to openly annoy Lin Yi, which was exactly what they were looking for. Seeing the reaction of the rookies, Meng Jueguang and Kang Mingming smiled proudly. From their point of view, Lin Yi had gotten 40 seeds all at once. It was already very stressful. If he was targeted in the next assessment round, he would be killed instantly. Even if they couldn't kill him directly, they would tire him out. It would be good if he could recover a little chi every day to deal with the challenges of the assessment. Cultivating 40 seeds? Dream on. Meng Jueguang and the others were very proud of themselves. However, Zhong Pingliang and Li Jingming, who were mixed in the middle, were sneering at the same time. With Boss Lin Yi's style, he never fought a battle without preparation. What the hell were these idiots laughing at? When the assessment results came out, who knew who was the idiot? With 40 seeds in his hand, Lin Yi didn't care about Meng Jueguang and the others' mockery. He walked straight back to Bitter Senior Brother and the others. Junior Brother Lin, what do you want me to say? Bitter Senior Brother looked at Lin Yi's calm expression and didn't know what to say. Although from his point of view, Lin Yi's actions today were indeed too reckless and brainless. It was no different from looking for death. But don't forget Lin Yi's performance in the previous 2 rounds. Every time, it was far beyond their expectations. especially the last resistance assessment. Lin Yi ignored the advice and chose the peak early stage of foundation establishment. At that time, Bitter senior brother even thought that Lin Yi would die on the spot. But reality proved that Lin Yi never did anything he wasn't confident in. Even Bitter senior brother himself wasn't confident in the next full-force attack from the peak early stage of foundation establishment. Lin Yi took it without a sound and escaped unscathed. He even got full marks for God level. So, today, Lin Yi chose all 40 seeds. Although it was hard for him to believe, there was no need to say anything. After all, even if he didn't have the ability, it didn't mean that Lin Yi couldn't. What if Lin Yi really could cultivate so many seeds? However, even if Lin Yi really had the confidence to cultivate so many seeds, the fourth round of assessment was about to begin. It was obvious that he would be targeted by Mengjueguang and the others again. Bitter senior brother was really worried for Lin Yi. Hee, Bitter senior brother, you guys really don't have to worry about me. I know what I'm doing. Lin Yi smiled as if nothing had happened. Then, he looked at Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, who were also hesitant to speak. He suddenly lowered his voice and said, "When we go back, both of you give me the seeds. I'll help you cultivate them." Huh. The three of them, including Bitter senior brother, were stunned at the same time. Not only did this guy choose all 40 seeds, but he also wanted Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongcai's. Wouldn't that be a total of 60 seeds? Boss Lin Yi, are you sure it's okay to do this? Even Xiao Ran, who had always been calm and reserved, could not help but ask in a low voice this time. He was not afraid that the matter would be leaked out and Hu Yunfeng and the others would say that he was cheating. In fact, if Mengjueguang and the others knew about it, not only would they not stop him, but they would also push the boat along with the current. It would be best if they could not wait to exhaust Lin Yi. Xiao Ran was worried for Lin Yi. After all, in the eyes of any normal person, 40 seeds already meant that they would have to spend a lot of vital energy on them. Even if there were no other disturbances, this alone would be quite taxing. Chapter 3756. 40 pills was already enough to make people laugh at him as an idiot, and if Lin Yi were to take both of their pills, it would be 60 pills in total, and he'd have to supply qi to them every day. Just the thought of it was enough to make one's knees go weak. What they didn't know was that Lin Yi wasn't only planning on taking their seeds. He was planning on taking Pinliang and Li Zhengming's seeds as well. Zhong Pingliang had 15 seeds, Li Zhengming had 10, Xiao Ran had 10, Xiao Hongkai had 10, and Lin Yi had 40. That was a total of 85 seeds. Not to mention the newcomers from the 3 pavilions, even the herb grower in the spirit medicine nursery, who was the most proficient in cultivating seeds, would probably faint on the spot if he was told that he had to cultivate all the seeds in just 3 months. What a joke. Nurturing a total of 85 spiritual herb seeds would take 3 months. Even if they were placed in the spirit medicine nursery with abundant spiritual energy, there was no need to worry about the lack of spiritual energy. Just providing spiritual energy to them to ripen them every day was enough to drain them dry. However, Lin Yi had full confidence in this. Don't forget that he had always relied on the space in the jade pendant. It was simply a cheat when dealing with this kind of task. In terms of spiritual energy, the concentration of spiritual energy in the space in the jade pendant was definitely higher than any other cave. Even the spirit medicine nursery, which was extremely rich in spiritual energy because of the countless spirit jade piled up, was still far behind the jade pendant. In terms of qi, Lin Yi, who had the spiritual energy in the space in the jade pendant, had no problem even if he poured qi into the seeds to ripen them all day long. Even if he was injured in the 4th round of the assessment, it didn't matter. After a quick recovery, there wouldn't be any problems with qi interruption that others were worried about. After all, what Lin Yi had to do was nothing more than to become the intermediary between the space in the jade pendant and the seeds. The speed of qi replenishment was far higher than the speed of qi consumption. Naturally, they were not like the others, who would take a few days to recover after expending too much of their true qi. If they were not careful, they might even lose a level. What's more, Lin Yi had an even more reliable method, which was completely effortless. Don't worry, there's no problem. I can guarantee the survival rate. Lin Yi smiled confidently. Very well. I believe in Boss Lin Yi. Xiao Honkai immediately raised both of her hands in agreement. After witnessing Lin Yi's various miraculous performances, she now had an almost blind admiration for Lin Yi. Since Boss Lin Yi wasn't acting on impulse, it meant that he definitely had the confidence. Listening to him was definitely the right choice. At this point, even if Xiao Ran was still a little worried about whether Lin Yi would seriously overdraw his qi, he could only choose to believe in Lin Yi. All right, I understand. However, although senior brother Ku Qian and Xiao Ran had already guessed that since Lin Yi dared to do this, he must have his confidence. But the three of them did not have the slightest intention of probing what exactly Lin Yi was relying on. After all, no matter how close their relationship was, some things were likely to involve personal secrets. It was better not to ask. If the three of them needed to know, with Lin Yi's personality, he would definitely take the initiative to tell them instead of hiding it. On the contrary, if they asked now, and it was not convenient for Lin Yi to say it for the time being, it would only cause embarrassment. They naturally had this sense of propriety. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Don't listen to what you shouldn't listen. This was the most basic principle between cultivators. After all, their privacy often involved their lives, and it was far more important than the privacy of ordinary people. After Lin Yi, all the rookies from the three pavilions had finished receiving their seeds. Then, everyone was given a container specially used to cultivate spiritual medicine seeds. Lin Yi observed it and found that although the cultivation container could not actively provide spiritual energy, it had the effect of absorbing the surrounding spiritual energy. It was just like how ordinary plants could use their developed roots to absorb water from the depths of the soil in all directions. Even if they grew in dry areas that lacked water, they could still ensure a certain degree of water supply. This specialized cultivation container clearly had the same effect in terms of absorbing spiritual energy. It had the same effect in terms of absorbing spirit qi, but it had a limitation. Each cultivation vessel could only plant 10 spirit herb seeds at once. If more were planted, due to the close proximity and density of the seeds, they would compete viciously for the spiritual energy. This way, no matter how rich the spiritual energy outside was, there was a high chance that a few spiritual medicine seeds in the middle would die due to the lack of spiritual energy. As a result, the rookies who had received 10 or even 20 spiritual medicine seeds could only choose to cultivate them in batches. Fortunately, the spiritual medicine seeds usually took 15 to 20 days to grow, and the assessment period was 3 months. Not only could they be divided into 2 batches, but they could also be divided into 3 or even 4 batches. In fact, in addition to ensuring that there was sufficient spiritual energy, they also had to ensure that every seed was continuously infused with sufficient vital energy. Most rookies had already planned to divide the spiritual medicine seeds into 3 or 4 batches to cultivate, with only 3 or 4 seeds in each batch. This way, they could focus on them and ensure that there was an adequate supply of spiritual energy and vital energy. This way, they could at least ensure that these 2 hard conditions could satisfy their basic needs as much as possible. However, other rookies had this concern, but Lin Yi did not. This was because he had no intention of using the cultivation containers provided by the Spirit Medicine Nursery. He planned to directly get some soil into the space of the jade pendant after he returned, and then transplant all 85 spiritual medicine seeds that he, Xiao Ran, and the others had into the space of the jade pendant. There was no need to worry about the lack of spiritual energy or vital energy. To Lin Yi, the space of the jade pendant was simply a natural cultivation container for spiritual medicine seeds. Moreover, it was a real divine tool. In this way, if there were no accidents, all 85 seeds should be cultivated in the next 20 days. Although it was not 100% guaranteed that they would germinate and grow seedlings, with a godly cheating tool like the space of the jade pendant, one could easily know that their survival rate was much higher than the other rookies. It would not be a problem for them to get a high score. Chapter 3757. After all, although the other newcomers saw the assessment points as the lifeblood of their future, in Lin Yi's eyes, it was just a formality. There was nothing wrong with having a higher score, but even if it was a lower score, it didn't matter. At least he could keep a low profile. As for the reward that was linked to the assessment points, it was just a foundation-breaking pill, and it was only a normal quality one. If Linny wanted to, he could easily make a dozen of higher quality ones, so he didn't care at all. Compared to the foundation-breaking pill, the materials needed to make the foundation-breaking pill were far less troublesome. At least, there wasn't a need for rare herbs like the heart-devouring exquisite grass. As long as one had spirit jade on hand, they could be bought with a little effort. Of course, although the foundation-breaking pill and the foundation-breaking pill were both level 4 elixirs, their true value couldn't be compared to the latter. Especially for an alchemist like Lin Yi, the difference was even greater. The foundation-breaking pill was rare because of the heart-devouring exquisite grass, so Lin Yi decided to choose all 40 elixir seeds. The reason why he asked for the seeds of Xiao Ran, Xiao Hongkai, Zhong Pingliang, and Li Zhengming was not only to help them, but also to see if there were any seeds of the heart-devouring exquisite grass among the seeds they randomly picked. If there were, he would naturally accept it. However, although the assessment of the spiritual herb trial today gave Lin Yi a huge surprise, there was one thing that made him feel a little regretful. The sissy manager of the spirit medicine nursery had mentioned that this batch of elixir seeds was cultivated in batches, so there was a huge flaw. Even if this batch of elixir seeds could be successfully cultivated into seedlings, they could only survive as a single plant. They wouldn't be able to breed further. Otherwise, Lin Yi could have planted them in the jade space and cultivated them for generations. That way, he wouldn't have to worry about the heart-devouring exquisite grass anymore. But then again, the greatest taboo in life was to be greedy and insatiable. If one was too greedy, one's fate would inevitably end early. Being able to obtain a heart-devouring exquisite grass seed in this round of assessment was already a pleasant surprise that made Lin Yi very satisfied. If he could find another heart-devouring exquisite grass seed in the selection round that Xiao Ran and the others had drawn, then it would be even more delightful. As for the heart-devouring exquisite grass, it could be cultivated generation after generation. This kind of thing was just a thought. Lin Yi did not say that he must have such an extravagant wish. After everyone received the spirit herb seeds and cultivation containers, the next step was to observe and learn the method of infusing spiritual qi into the spirit herb seeds. This method was very simple. It was nothing more than controlling the release of spiritual qi, allowing it to penetrate the skin of the seed and permeate the inside. Wrap it up and nourish it. During the cultivation period, it should last for an hour every day. Elixir seeds were spiritual objects of heaven and earth. For them, the Jinqi in a person's body was not only able to meet their growth needs like the natural spiritual energy of heaven and earth, but because it was more stimulating, it was like artificial hormones, speeding up their growth cycle, allowing them to germinate within 15 to 20 days. Grow seedlings. However, because the vitality of the elixir seeds was extremely fragile, when infusing them with spiritual qi, the concentration of spiritual qi must be controlled within a certain range, and it had to be maintained for an hour every day. They could not be greedy for more than this, and they could not be greedy for less than this. Otherwise, it would not be able to stimulate them. Otherwise, the stimulation would be too strong, and they would be stimulated to death. After observing for a period of time and grasping the essentials of infusing spiritual qi, the rookies of the 3 pavilions dispersed and returned to their respective caves to experiment and ponder. After all, in 3 days, the 4th round of the assessment would begin at the same time, and they had to figure it out as soon as possible within these 3 days. Otherwise, when the 4th round of the assessment began, they would not have so much time and energy to spend on it. On the way back to the welcoming pavilion, Lin Yi quietly found an opportunity while he was not being noticed. He asked for Zhong Pingliang and Li Zhengming's respective spirit herb seeds. The degree of admiration these two had for him was even higher than that of Xiao Hongkai. As soon as Lin Yi asked, they handed over the spirit herb seeds without hesitation, not even asking for the reason. After returning to the cave, Lin Yi couldn't wait to take out all the spirit herb seeds that Xiao Ran and the others had picked. Because each seed was individually sealed and labeled, it was easy to see what kind of seeds they were. After looking through it carefully, Lin Yi finally found another heart-devouring exquisite grass seed among Zhong Pingliang's 15 spirit herb seeds. As for the other 3, they regrettably missed it. However, this result was already very satisfactory to Lin Yi. One for himself and one for Zhong Pingliang. adding up to 2 heart-devouring exquisite grass seeds. If they could be successfully cultivated, according to the experience of refining the foundation-building pill last time, 2 stalks of heart-devouring exquisite grass were enough to refine 2 foundation-building pills. If he was still not satisfied with this, then he would really be too greedy. Linny went out for a stroll in the outskirts, tossing a few piles of dirt into the jade space. Any dirt that entered the jade space, it was guaranteed that it would become spiritual soil with an abundance of spirit energy, but different herbs required different soil types in addition to the spirit energy they needed. Some needed to be drier, some needed to be more wet, some needed to be more alkaline, some needed to be more acidic, and the requirements for the various trace elements in the soil were not the same. Although it could be guaranteed to survive as long as there was enough spirit energy, whether or not it could be cultivated well depended on whether or not it could be cultivated well. Lin Yi didn't really care about the other spirit herb seeds. After all, as long as they successfully cultivated the seedlings, he would be able to get points, and he would have to return them to the pill hall. The most important thing was the survival rate. The quality of the spirit herb was secondary. However, the 2 heart-devouring exquisite grass seeds were different. This was something that Linny needed to take care of. Just ensuring that they survived was obviously not enough. According to the sissy manager of the Spirit Medicine Nursery, because this batch of spirit herb seeds were cultivated in batches by the Spirit Medicine Nursery, compared to natural seeds, they were inferior seeds. Not only could they not be cultivated, but even if they survived, the quality of the spirit herb seeds would be far inferior to naturally grown spirit herb seeds. Chapter 3758. At that time, he should have been able to refine 2 of them. However, due to the poor quality of the 2 heart-devouring exquisite grass, he could only refine 1. That was really a scam. In order to ensure that the heart-devouring exquisite grass could grow as well as possible, apart from the crucial supply of spiritual energy and true energy, choosing suitable dry soil was also crucial. Lin Yi naturally did not dare to be negligent in this aspect. After preparing a few batches of different soil in the space of the jade pendant, Lin Yi immediately returned to the cave dwelling and transplanted all 85 spiritual medicine seeds. Then, according to what he had learned in the pill hall, he began to instill true energy into these spiritual medicine seeds. If it were other newcomers, with their strength at the great perfection of heaven stage, in order to ensure the effect of true energy stimulation, even if they went all out, they could at most guarantee to instill true energy into 3 to 4 spiritual medicine seeds at the same time. However, Lin Yi was now an expert at the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment realm. He only needed to instill a certain amount of true energy into each spiritual medicine seed. Not to mention 3 or 4, even dozens of spiritual medicine seeds would be more than enough. Moreover, with the replenishment of spiritual energy from the space of the jade pendant, the true energy in his body was endless, and he did not need to worry about the problem of overdrafting his true energy like others. The 85 spiritual medicine seeds only needed to be divided into 2 batches, and each batch was infused for an hour according to the set amount, and Lin Yi's task for the day would be considered completed. And after this, he only needed to continue this for 20 days to see the results. At that time, how many of these seeds could grow? Especially the 2 heart-devouring exquisite grass seeds that Lin Yi was most concerned about, how they would grow in the end, and whether the space in the jade pendant would be able to nurture divine weapons like what he had expected, it all remained to be seen. According to Lin Yi's speculation, even if the effect of nurturing in the space of the jade pendant was not the best, it would definitely not be bad, at least not worse than the results of other newcomers. In the next 3 days, Lin Yi went to the Spirit Jade Hall to mine in the day, and came back at night to instill true energy into the spiritual medicine seeds for a total of 2 hours. After that, he would cultivate as usual. And in fact, the process of instilling true energy was in itself a different way of cultivation. So to Lin Yi, this was no different from his usual rhythm, and he was rather leisurely. In comparison, the other rookies did not have it as easy. Although they did not have to take care of a total of 85 spiritual herb seeds like Lin Yi did, they did not have to do so. However, just dealing with 3 or 4 spiritual herb seeds a day was already difficult enough. Not only did he have to work tirelessly every day to inject vital chi into the seed, but he also had to find a way to recover his vital qi after he was done. It should be known that this process was very tedious and strenuous for an ordinary newcomer without a heaven-defying golden finger like the space in the jade pendant. Apart from that, they also had to worry about these seeds. The newcomers from the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Profound Pavilion might have it slightly better. At the very least, the density of the spiritual energy inside the cave abodes was still acceptable. However, the newcomers from the Blue Cloud Pavilion were in a tough spot. Aside from having to ensure a daily supply of quintessential qi, they also had to think of ways to increase the supply of spiritual energy. This was very difficult. One must know that they were not like Linny, who had a jade pendant space. They were also not like the Pill Hall and the Spirit Medicine Nursery, where they could throw spiritual jades all over the ground in order to increase the density of spiritual energy. They only had a few spiritual jades on hand, and they were reluctant to use them for their own cultivation. Fortunately, the points of the newcomers from the three great pavilions were calculated separately. They did not need to compete with the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Profound Pavilion. They only needed to surpass the newcomers from the Blue Cloud Pavilion. Not enough spiritual energy. This was a common problem for everyone. If all the spiritual herb seeds of the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers died together, it would not matter. At most, no one would get any points. In any case, it was fine as long as they did not lose to others. Do your best and leave it to fate. This was the thinking of most of the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers. Every day, they would think of all kinds of ways to supply spiritual energy to the spiritual herb seeds. When the time came, it would be delightful if they succeeded. If they failed, there was nothing they could do. Compared to the busy newcomers, Lin Yi, Xiao Ran, and Xiao Honkai appeared to be very leisurely. Lin Yi had the jade pendant space artifact to rely on, while Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai simply gave the spiritual herb seeds to Lin Yi. They did not need to worry about this matter at all. They only needed to prepare for the fourth assessment that was about to begin. What Lin Yi did not know was that in these 3 days, a moderate storm had occurred in the inner street of the market, and the cause of the incident was because of him. On this day, when it was almost noon, a cultivator who looked like a youth but was actually over 100 years old came to the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce. He did not buy anything and directly asked the shopkeeper, Hong Zhong, to come out and see him. Although Hong Zhong was a shopkeeper of the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce and had a high status, he was still a businessman after all. He paid attention to making money by being amiable. Hearing the other party's tone of calling him out in public, although he was a little displeased, he still politely invited him into the private room. "May I ask your name?" Hong Zhong saw that the other party was dressed luxuriously and had an extraordinary temperament, so he took the initiative to ask. Unexpectedly, the man raised his eyebrows and said with a sneer, "What? As a shopkeeper of a chamber of commerce, you don't even know me, and you still have the nerve to mingle in this North Island market? Didn't your master teach you that you should learn to pay respect to others when you want to do business?" Hong Zhong's heart shuddered, and he carefully looked at the other party a few times again. He couldn't help but think, is this guy a new big shot of the 3 pavilions? It's true that you need to pay respect to others when you want to do business, but with the power and influence of the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce as the top chamber of commerce on the 5 Heaven Stage Islands, ordinary local tyrants would take the initiative to pay respect to them. In the entire North Island of the Heaven Stage Island, only a few people needed to be greeted by the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce. However, Hong Zhong had been in this branch of the North Island for decades, and he had met those giants of the North Island more than once or twice. He had already paid respect to those who should have paid respect to him. Not only did he have a good relationship with those big shots in the Elders Club, but even a newly promoted strong man like Ramjia, the hall master of the law enforcement hall, also took the initiative to express his goodwill to him. There was no reason for him to miss out any big shot. Although the strength of the guy in front of him was not bad, he was far from the level of those big shots. At most, he could only show off in front of ordinary cultivators. Where did he get the courage to challenge the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce? Could it be that he was a second-generation cultivator? Although he was suspicious in his heart, Hong Zhong was still polite on the surface. He ordered people to prepare tea, and once again lowered his posture and said, "Please tell me." Chapter 3759. Nan Tianyong? Hong Zhong was stunned. He thought about it carefully in his mind, but found that he had never heard of this name. Otherwise, with his photographic memory, as long as he had heard this name, he would never have no impression at all. However, since he claimed to be from Towering Pavilion, he must have some background. Maybe he was the second generation of a big shot in the North Island, but he didn't come out much before? Hong Zhong secretly speculated and continued to ask calmly, "Then, Your Excellency, what can I do for you today?" Nan Tianyong drank up the expensive tea in the cup. The manservant next to him twitched his mouth and secretly scolded this guy for wasting God's gift. Then he snorted and said, "I heard a long time ago that there is a big Hong's Chamber of Commerce in the inner street of the market, but I didn't have time to come and take a look. So I took the time today to come and take a look. By the way, I want to seek justice for my useless disciple." As he spoke, Nan Tianyong's powerful aura poured out unreservedly, causing all the tables and chairs in the private room to tremble. If it wasn't for the fact that there were servants around to protect them, some of the precious porcelain would have been shattered. Seek justice? What's the name of your disciple? What's the problem with our Hong's Chamber of Commerce? Hong Zhong's face suddenly became cold. As the manager of the branch of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce, although he said that Harmony could make money, he was also a big shot. If the other party wanted to help his business, then he naturally had to greet him with a smile. But since it was obvious that the other party was here to make trouble, there was no need to bow to anyone. In this small North Island, although the Hong's Chamber of Commerce had many good relationships and would not easily make enemies with others unless it was necessary, with their power and confidence, if they really met any enemies, there was no need to bow to anyone at all. If you dared to show your teeth to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce, you must have such good teeth first. And as far as Hong Zhong knew, there were definitely no more than 3 people in the North Island who had such good teeth. However, Nan Tianyong didn't care about Hong Zhong's expression at all. He crossed his legs and said with an unfriendly face, "My disciple, surnamed you, single name Yuzha?" Hong Zhong couldn't help but furrow his brows. He still didn't have much of an impression. Unless it was an important guest like Lin Yi who could casually give him 2 top-grade foundation-breaking pellets, he wouldn't even ask for the name of an ordinary guest. Naturally, he didn't know who this Yuzha represented. Seeing that Hong Zhong still did not speak, Nan Tianyong snorted coldly and continued, "My disciple came here 2 days ago, saying that he had taken a fancy to some lousy stone. Originally, he sincerely wanted to help your business, but in the end, not only did he not manage to buy it, but he also got into a conflict with someone and ended up in a half-dead state. He is still lying in bed today, and we don't even know if he can recover. This happened to your Hong Chamber of Commerce. You have to give us an explanation." So it was the person who had competed with Second Lin over the star inkstone. Only then did Hong Zhong understand. Although he didn't know Yuzha's name, he had a deep impression of Yuzha with his ability to read people. Although Yuzha had disguised himself very well, he still couldn't escape his eyes. That youth from the Soaring Pavilion was very good at disguising himself to numb others. He was truly a scheming person. Experts of the same level who were slightly inexperienced would probably fall for his tricks. However, what truly shocked Hong Zhong was not this. Rather, it was the meaning behind Nan Tianyong's words. This scheming Yuzha, at the time, had clearly set his sights on the star inkstone in Second Lin's hands. In addition, he was an expert of the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage, while Second Lin was only an expert at the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment stage. There was a difference of an entire stage. Adding on the fact that he had pretended to be superficial to numb the opponent, in theory, Second Lin should have had no chance of escaping his pursuit. Even if Hong Zhong had intentionally pointed it out at the time, in his view, for some reason, Second Lin hadn't taken it to heart. If things continued to develop, he would definitely suffer. However, in the end, he was just a businessman and couldn't speak too clearly. Otherwise, he would take the initiative to offend others. This was a major taboo in the business world. However, from Nan Tianyong's short words, not only did that Yuzha not gain any advantage over Second Lin, but he was beaten half to death and suffered a great loss. From the looks of it, although he had thought highly of this mysterious Lin heir, he had still underestimated him. Not only could he casually take out 2 top-quality Foundation establishment barrier-breaking pills, but he was also able to kill powerful and cunning enemies who were stronger than him. This Lin heir, who didn't look very impressive, was the one who had hidden his true strength. After thinking this through, Hong Zhong couldn't help but rejoice in his heart. It could be seen that he hadn't given the Spirit Jade card to the wrong person. Second Lin was definitely a super potential stock worth investing in. At the end of the day, every Spirit Jade card produced by the Merchant Alliance was a symbol of identity and status in the entire 5 great islands of the Heaven Stage. Even if it was given to a manager of the Hong Merchant Alliance, there weren't many of them. There was no need to doubt their value. To Hong Zhong, every Spirit Jade card he gave out was an important investment. If some of them disappeared without a trace, then it would be a loss. If some of them became an important customer that could truly bring in huge profits, then it would be a profit. This standard was placed on Lin heir. Although he could casually take out 2 supreme-grade bottleneck-breaking pills, and in Hong Zhong's eyes, he was definitely an important customer. However, if he was casually killed by Yu Jia after leaving the house, then to Hong Zhong, it would still be a very bad investment. After all, no matter how powerful a dead person was when they were alive, they couldn't bring him any profit after death. But now, it seemed that Second Lin was not an ordinary person. Now that he thought about it, it was a rare and wise decision to bet on him. Seeing that Hong Zhong was silent, Nan Tianyong couldn't help but say angrily, "You are the manager here. Come and tell me what happened." "What? You don't dare to speak? Or are you mute?" As he spoke, Nan Tianyong was about to go berserk. Hong Zhong then replied in a low voice, "I'm sorry, my shop is only open for business. The one who had a conflict with your disciple is not my shop, but someone else. So I don't think I need to give you any explanation." "What? It has nothing to do with you?" Nan Tianyong was so angry that he laughed instead. "Nothing to do with you? Then who does it have to do with? My disciple got into trouble because he came here to buy something, and it has nothing to do with you?" Chapter 3760. This guy is just a supervisory deacon of Soaring Sky Pavilion? When Hong Zhong heard this, he couldn't help but look at Nan Tianyong strangely again. This guy looks like a normal person. Why is he so stupid? A mere supervising deacon of the Soaring Sky Pavilion dares to bully the Hong Chamber of Commerce? Where does this guy get his confidence from? Where does his boldness come from? Should I say that this guy is really bold? Or should I say that he is fearless because he doesn't know the meaning of the Hong Chamber of Commerce? Logically speaking, anyone with a bit of brain and knowledge should know what kind of existence the Hong Chamber of Commerce was. He shouldn't be so ignorant. The so-called supervisory deacon of Soaring Sky Pavilion was equivalent to a member of the Law Enforcement Hall in Soaring Sky Pavilion. It was a special envoy sent by the Law Enforcement Hall to the 3 great pavilions. But in fact, it had to accept the leadership of the 3 great pavilions and the Law Enforcement Hall. To put it bluntly, it could supervise everything, but it had to follow the wishes of the higher-ups on both sides. It was fine to scare ordinary disciples, but in fact, if a disciple made a small mistake, it was still up to the 3 great pavilions to make a decision. Unless it was a big mistake, the Law Enforcement Hall would directly intervene, and it had nothing to do with the supervisory deacon. Therefore, the supervisory deacon had a lot of power. This identity was not even worth a fart in front of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Even the pavilion master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, Shangguan Tianhua, had to look up to the Hong Chamber of Commerce. How could a mere supervisory deacon dare to come to the Hong Chamber of Commerce and spout nonsense? Did this guy take the wrong medicine? Or did he forget to take his medicine when he went out today? What they didn't know was that Nan Tianyong had always been arrogant. He had been working in the back mountain hall, and apart from his disciple, Yu Jia, he had little contact with the outside world. In recent years, he had been in closed-door training in order to break through. Only when he succeeded in his closed-door training was he transferred back to Soaring Sky Pavilion to take up the important position of supervisory deacon. However, he had only been in office for a few days when his only disciple, Yu Jia, was beaten half to death. As his master, of course, he had to stand up for him. Yu Jia had added oil and vinegar to stir up trouble, so he had come to seek justice. Before this, although he had heard of the Hong Chamber of Commerce's name, he did not take it to heart at all. It was merely an unscrupulous merchant that exploited ordinary people. It was nothing in front of him, the supervising deacon of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. He has a backer? Damn it, who doesn't have a backer? How could an ordinary disciple of the Law Enforcement Hall be sent to the Soaring Sky Pavilion without a backer? Furthermore, the three Nantianyong brothers could be considered to have deep roots in the Heaven Stage North Island, so they were usually somewhat unscrupulous in their actions. Thus, the scene before them appeared. The dignified Hong Chamber of Commerce was actually stopped by a mere supervisory deacon. Hong Zhong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was the first time he had encountered such an inexplicable and rare thing in decades. However, although Hong Zhong found it funny, he still held back his laughter and asked seriously, "Then what do you think should be done?" Nan Tianyong raised his eyebrows and pretended to be magnanimous. "Don't say that I'm blackmailing you. You can compensate me with 1,000 pieces of spirit jade as compensation for the damages. Also, tell me the background of the guy who tried to snatch the stone from my disciple 2 days ago, and we can forget about this matter. How about it?" Hearing this, Hong Zhong and the other servants in the shop couldn't help but laugh. 1,000 pieces of spiritual jade? This guy really dared to ask for it. This idiot who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, running over to stand up for you today was a lie. He really wanted to take the opportunity to get the spirit jade for himself. "I'm sorry, I can't comply with either of your 2 requests." Seeing that Nan Tianyong seemed to show signs of anger, Hong Zhong finally replied. Even if he was a businessman who paid attention to harmony and wealth, and would never make enemies with others unless it was absolutely necessary, he still had his principles and limits. Obviously, he would not give him 1,000 pieces of spiritual jade. Otherwise, if this kind of precedent was set, the Hong Chamber of Commerce would no longer need to do business in the future and wait to send spirit jade to others every day. As for revealing the identity of Lin Air, not to mention that he didn't know. Even if he did know, he would never reveal a word from his mouth. After all, the more important a customer was, the more they would pay attention to personal privacy. Privacy was the lifeline of their profession. If they broke the rules, it would ruin the reputation of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, and the consequences would be much more serious than being blackmailed for 1,000 pieces of spiritual jade. You can't even cooperate with one? Nan Tianyong obviously didn't expect to get such an answer. He suddenly felt embarrassed and said fiercely, "Do you know who you are talking to? Do you really think that you can bully your customers and no one can deal with you? Let me tell you, if you really make me angry, your shop will have to close tomorrow." "All right, then try it. I'll wait for the day you make the Hong Chamber of Commerce close." At this point, even with Hong Zhong's self-restraint, he no longer planned to be polite and directly responded coldly. A mere supervising deacon of the Soaring Sky Pavilion actually dared to speak rudely and say that the Hong Chamber of Commerce would close. This guy was really *king idiot. Open the door for an idiot. Oh, you're so arrogant. To put it nicely, you're a shopkeeper, but to put it bluntly, you're just a servant doing business. How dare you bare your teeth in front of me? I'm giving you face, but you don't want it. Nan Tianyong was instantly enraged and directly smashed the table beside him into powder. However, before he could react, 4 figures flashed out from nowhere at a speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, they had surrounded him. Nan Tianyong's expression changed abruptly. The aura of these 4 experts was actually above his. Nan Tianyong had been in seclusion for the past few years, and his strength had improved by leaps and bounds. He believed that he was definitely not an ordinary person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to successfully sit in such an important position as the supervising deacon of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Nan Tianyong's current strength was enough to easily crush most of the inner sect disciples of the 3 pavilions. Otherwise, people like Yuzha wouldn't have paid any attention to him, an in-name master. Unless it was the elders of the 3 pavilions or important figures like Ramjia of the Law Enforcement Hall, he really didn't need to care about other ordinary cultivators. Otherwise, if he didn't even have this bit of confidence, how would he dare to challenge the Hong Chamber of Commerce alone? Even if he had been in seclusion in the mountains in recent years, and even if he was ignorant and inexperienced, he at least had some common sense. None of the merchants that could enter the inner street were ordinary businessmen. However, it was only at this moment that Nan Tianyong finally realized that he had really kicked an iron plate this time. Chapter 3761. One had to know that for experts of this level, the annual cost of providing for them was already a large sum of spiritual jades. In addition, there were other generous treatments. Ignoring everything else, the annual cost of the 4 people in front of him was already an astronomical figure. It was not something an ordinary Chamber of Commerce could afford. No wonder so many people said that the Hong Chamber of Commerce was unfathomable. Even his own disciple, Yu Jia, deliberately reminded him not to act rashly after arriving at the Hong Chamber of Commerce and to be polite. It was already a success to be able to find out the identity of that person that day. No matter what, he should not have any conflict with the Hong Chamber of Commerce. When Yu Jia said those words, Nan Tianyong only thought that his disciple was too timid to cause trouble, so he did not take it to heart. He only wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to extort a large sum of money. However, now that he thought about it, he was simply courting death, being surrounded by 4 experts who were more powerful than him, and all of them looked unfriendly and murderous. Nan Tianyong instantly broke out in a cold sweat. If they were to really fight, he wouldn't even have the chance to make a move, let alone escape. The 4 of them only needed to move a finger, and it would be pure wishful thinking for him to leave a whole corpse. However, although he knew that the situation was not right, Nan Tianyong had always been arrogant. Even in this kind of situation, he still stubbornly refused to admit defeat. The 3 heroes of the Nan family would always lose in battle, but not in spirit. What? You guys are doing business. Do you dare to make a move on me, the supervising deacon of the Soaring Sky Pavilion? I will make it clear today. If you dare to touch a single hair of mine, then you are challenging the Soaring Sky Pavilion. I want to see if you have the guts to do so. Nan Tianyong pretended to be tough and shouted loudly. Hong Zhong and the other experts of the Hong Chamber of Commerce looked at each other, their eyes full of mockery. This guy was obviously very weak, yet he purposely pretended to be tough. He was a typical case of being tough on the outside but weak on the inside. However, Nan Tianyong's words had some effect. If he was just a wandering expert, Hong Zhong would definitely not let him walk out alive, just because he dared to smash the table of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. However, the problem was that Nan Tianyong was a member of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. More importantly, he was a supervising deacon of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. As the saying goes, before beating a dog, one must look at its master. Hong Zhong had enough reason to kill him on the spot. However, although the Hong Chamber of Commerce had never been afraid of trouble, they would not recklessly cause trouble out of consideration for their own interests. As the leader of the 3 great pavilions on the North Island, Soaring Sky Pavilion was not only powerful but also had a strong background. It was linked to the interests of many strongmen in Zhongdao. It could be said to be a real behemoth. If he killed Nan Tianyong here today, although Hong Zhong would be able to vent his anger, it would also be equivalent to slapping the Soaring Sky Pavilion's face in public. After all, this guy was the supervising deacon of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, not an ordinary inner disciple with no symbolic status. An ordinary inner sect disciple, even if he was from the Soaring Sky Pavilion, would not be able to escape. As long as this disciple did not have a strong background, then it could be said that it was a personal grudge. If he was killed, then so be it. The Rising Sky Pavilion would not go so far as to fall out with the equally powerful Hong Chamber of Commerce over such a small matter. However, if they killed a supervising deacon of the Soaring Sky Pavilion in public, then it would be a serious matter. In the words commonly used in the secular world, this would be a serious and nasty diplomatic incident, even if it was just for the sake of face. The higher-ups of the Soaring Sky Pavilion would definitely not turn a blind eye to it, and they would have to come forward and fight the Hong Chamber of Commerce to the death. At that time, the person who made the decision today might become the sacrifice of the mutual compromise between the higher-ups of the 2 forces. For Hong Zhong, who had always been good at judging the situation, it was impossible for him not to have predicted this. Therefore, even if it was just for self-protection. Hong Zhong, who was experienced and prudent, would not make such an extreme move. He immediately instructed the 4 guest chamberlains in a deep voice. This fellow came to provoke the Hong Chamber of Commerce and cause trouble. I'll have to trouble the 4 of you to throw him out so that he won't be able to cause a ruckus here. It will affect our business. The 4 foreign chamberlains nodded immediately. Although it was much more difficult to capture each other alive than to kill each other, they not only had an absolute advantage in terms of strength, but they also had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers. If they wanted to throw Nan Tianyong out, it was just a small matter of a thought. Seeing the powerful aura of the 4 people shrouding him and about to make a move, Nan Tianyong finally panicked. Although he was sure that the other party did not dare to kill him in public, if they only threw him out without killing him, the soaring sky pavilion would not interfere at all. After all, this would only make Nan Tianyong lose face, not the face of the soaring sky pavilion. Being suppressed by the aura of the 4 guest experts, Nan Tianyong hurriedly admitted defeat. Don't be in a hurry to make a move. How about this? I will take a step back. I don't need you to pay 1,000 pieces of spiritual jades, as long as you tell me the identity of the person who injured my disciple. This should be reasonable, and you will not suffer a loss. Hearing this, everyone present sneered. This person was really cheap. He finally knew to admit defeat at the last moment. What was he doing earlier? Sure enough, he was a coward who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Hong Zhong laughed and looked around at the other customers who had been attracted by the commotion caused by Nan Tianyong. He suddenly felt happy in his heart. This idiot had created a good opportunity for him to advertise and build the image of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Hong Zhong immediately said solemnly, "In our Hong Chamber of Commerce, the privacy of any guest is our lifeline. It is absolutely impossible to leak it to any other unrelated people. Therefore, this request of yours, in this old man's opinion, is extremely unreasonable. For guests, you can make your move." The 4 guest experts immediately nodded and made their move. Facing the 4 of them working together, Nan Tianyong did not even have the chance to make a sound. He was directly wrapped up by 4 layers of incomparably powerful true energy, unable to move. At the same time, the manservant on the side had already opened the window on the 2nd floor. Nan Tianyong did not even have the chance to struggle and was directly thrown out of the window like garbage. Bang! The people below suddenly exclaimed and hurriedly gave way to an empty space, allowing Nan Tianyong to fiercely fall to the ground. The fall made him dizzy. After being in a daze for a long time, Nan Tianyong dizzily struggled to get up from the ground. He stretched out his hand and touched his head. It was actually full of blood. His head was simply broken and bleeding, making him look like a mess. Chapter 3762. According to common sense, being thrown down from the 2nd floor, even an ordinary person wouldn't end up in such a miserable state, let alone a powerful cultivator like him. But the problem was, what really threw him down was not the height of the 2nd floor, but the powerful zhenqi that the 4 experts had deliberately wrapped around him. Even if they did not kill him, just the impact alone was enough to make him suffer. If it was his disciple, Yu Jia, a middle-stage foundation establishment expert, then it wouldn't be as simple as falling down. He would probably die on the spot with blood flowing out of his orifices. Under the curious and gloating gazes of the passers-by, Nan Tianyong couldn't help but be flustered and exasperated. Although he didn't dare to go up to the door, he pointed at the 2nd floor window and was about to curse. But before he could curse, the 4 powerful auras from upstairs locked onto him. Their killing intent was faintly discernible. If he showed the slightest bit of disrespect at this time, it seemed that these 4 guest experts would kill him at any time. Although businessmen paid attention to harmony and wealth, and Nan Tianyong was very certain that Hong Zhong wouldn't kill him today, these 4 guest experts were different. Hong Zhong was a businessman, but the 4 of them weren't. They were only guests responsible for peaceful times, and the Hong Chamber of Commerce didn't have much of a restriction on them. What's more, all experts had their own pride. If a clown like Nan Tianyong repeatedly challenged their bottom line, killing him would be like killing a chicken. This was the recognized privilege of experts in the cultivation world. Even if Soaring Sky Pavilion pursued this matter, it would be useless. Facing the cold, killing intent of these four guest experts, Nan Tianyong immediately swallowed back the vulgarities at the corner of his mouth. He was reckless, but he wasn't stupid. If he was really stupid, even if he had a powerful background, he wouldn't be able to reach this point. Hong Zhong stood at the window and saw Nan Tianyong's sullen expression. He said lightly, "Take care, I won't send you off." Although his voice wasn't loud, it was like a heavy hammer. Every word struck the chest of everyone present, especially Nan Tianyong, who bore the brunt of it. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression was extremely ugly. However, while his expression was unsightly, Nan Tianyong was extremely shocked in his heart. This was because Hong Zhong had always been amiable. He had always thought that this old man was just a lackey of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. He didn't expect that he was an existence even more terrifying than the four foreign chamberlains. Just based on the strength that Hong Zhong had revealed at this moment, killing him would be as easy as crushing an ant. To think that he had recklessly provoked Hong Zhong earlier. Now that he thought about it, he broke out in cold sweat. Just now, it was as if the god of longevity wanted to hang himself. Was he tired of living? In the face of such a disparity, even if Nan Tianyong was used to being rude and overbearing, he could only bow his head and admit defeat for the time being. He covered his face and fled, causing the passers-by around him to burst into laughter. Some of them knew Hong Zhong. They all gave him a thumbs up and cheered. Hong Zhong looked at this scene and smiled slightly. He politely cupped his hands towards the people downstairs to express his gratitude. However, a few guests who were familiar with Hong Zhong found an opportunity to remind him, "Shopkeeper Hong, although this Nan Tianhai is an idiot, he has two other brothers who are far more powerful than him. They are also rude and unreasonable, and they have a good reputation on the North Island. Of course, their reputations are not good. You have to be careful in the future." "Thank you for the reminder." Hong Zhong nodded and replied. He stroked his long beard and chuckled. "If they dare to come, just bring it on. Our Hong Chamber of Commerce is doing business. But sometimes we have to find an opportunity to show off our muscles. At least we have to intimidate some people with ulterior motives. Otherwise, if anyone dares to bare their teeth at us, it will be troublesome in the future. But there will be no end to it." Behind him was the Hong Chamber of Commerce, which was one of the top chambers of commerce in the entire 5 Heaven Stage Islands. The so-called 3 heroes of the Nan family were just local tyrants on the North Island. Not to mention the Hong Chamber of Commerce, even a newly promoted expert like Ramjia of the Law Enforcement Hall could crush them to death with one hand. There was no need to take them seriously. If Nan Tianyong really didn't know what was good for him and went back to find his 2 brothers to stand up for him, Hong Zhong wouldn't mind suppressing the 3 heroes of the Nan family. After all, they could only do it once. He had tolerated them this time. If they came to pick a fight again, even if he killed them on the spot, the Rising Sky Pavilion wouldn't say anything. However, although Hong Zhong wasn't worried about his Hong Chamber of Commerce, he couldn't help but worry about Lin Er, whom he had just met once. Now that Nan Tianhai had suffered a setback, it was obvious that he wouldn't come to the Hong Chamber of Commerce to pick a fight in a short time. So the biggest way to vent his anger was Lin Er. Once they dug out Lin Er's identity, the consequences could be imagined. In front of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, the 3 heroes of the Nan family were just ants that could be easily crushed. However, for an expert at the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm like Lin Er, he was a big shot. If someone really came to his door, there was nothing he could do. Hopefully, this Lin Er hid well enough that he wouldn't be found so easily. Otherwise, the Spirit Jade card that he had just given out would be for naught. To others, the storm caused by the Hong Chamber of Commerce was just a joke. But to this so-called Lin Er, it was a huge problem, and even a matter of life and death. However, as the person involved, Lin E, didn't know anything about this. At present, he was just an ordinary newcomer to the Blue Cloud Pavilion. He didn't know this so-called Lin Er, nor did he have any interaction with him. However, if Linny said that he was just an ordinary newcomer, then all the other newcomers from the 3 great pavilions would be too ashamed to show their faces. He was the first newcomer from the three great pavilions to succeed in the Foundation Establishment realm, the only newcomer who could get full marks in the first two assessments, and the newcomer who could quickly recover from an attack from the peak of the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. If this could be said to be ordinary, then the others didn't need to live anymore. Of course, if the other newcomers, who were already exhausted from cultivating 3 or 4 spirit herb seeds every day, knew that Lin Yi could easily cultivate 85 spirit herb seeds at the same time, then they would probably all commit suicide together. Chapter 3763. However, for the rookies, the real challenge had only just begun. That was because the fourth rookie assessment segment was about to begin, and the content of this assessment segment was similar to the rookie assessment in previous years. It was the rookie challenge that everyone was familiar with. However, compared to the previous year's challenge, which was purely a head-on ranking, this rookie challenge segment was not only a competition between the three pavilions. In order to be integrated with the other assessment segments, it highlighted a point system. In this rookie challenge segment, every rookie's existing cave abode would be used as the initial ranking. The cave abode and corresponding points would be used as the spoils of war for each round of the challenge. The winner would be rewarded in real time. Naturally, the loser would also receive the corresponding punishment in real time. Taking the Blue Cloud Pavilion as an example, there were a total of 15 cave abodes at the foot of the mountain. They were divided into number 1 at the foot of the mountain to number 15 at the foot of the mountain. Each cave abode had a corresponding challenge point. Number 1 at the foot of the mountain was worth 15 points. Number 2 at the foot of the mountain was worth 14 points. Number 3 at the foot of the mountain was worth 13 points, and so on. The last cave abode, number 10 at the foot of the mountain, was worth 1 point. Every time, be it taking the initiative to issue a challenge or accepting a challenge, the rookie would have to use the challenge points corresponding to his cave abode as a bet. If the challenger won, he would obtain the challenger's challenge points and obtain the challenger's cave abode. If he lost, he would lose his challenge points and the cave abode would remain unchanged. Of course, only the cave abode with a lower ranking had the right to take the initiative to challenge a cave abode with a higher ranking. Furthermore, the other party could not refuse the challenge. If it was a cave abode with a higher ranking, one could not take the initiative to challenge a cave abode with a lower ranking. For example, Lin Yi was in number 14 cave abode at the foot of the mountain. So, he could only challenge the rookies in the first 13 caves, but he could not take the initiative to challenge Meng Tong, who lived in number 15 cave abode at the foot of the mountain. And if he took the initiative to issue a challenge to the rookies in the first 13 caves, for example, Li Zhengming in number 2 cave abode at the foot of the mountain, then, in the challenge between the two, the challenge points that Lin Yi needed to take out would be the 2 points corresponding to his cave abode at the foot of the mountain. As for Li Zhengming, due to his cave abode ranking being higher than Lin Yi, he could not refuse. Therefore, not only could he not refuse, but he also had to take out the 14 challenge points corresponding to the second cave abode at the foot of the mountain. If Lin Yi won, then he would get 14 challenge points from his opponent, and he would also get his opponent's second cave house at the foot of the mountain. On the other hand, not only would Li Zhengming lose 14 challenge points, he would also have to live in the 14th cave house at the foot of the mountain until the next time he challenged someone. On the contrary, if Li Zhengming wins, then he will get 2 challenge points from the opponent and continue to live in the second cave under the mountain without changing, while Lin Yi will have 2 challenge points deducted and continue to struggle in the 14th cave under the mountain. Apart from that, the most important thing was, in the 4th segment, every rookie's challenge points were given according to the different cave abodes. Every rookie would be given corresponding challenge points in the first round of the challenge competition. The rest of the points used were from the previous assessment segment. In other words, Lin Yi's initial points before the start of the challenge would be the 2 points corresponding to the 14th cave abode at the foot of the mountain, in addition to the 105 points he had obtained in the previous 2 rounds of assessment. Added together, it would be 107 points. Whether his points would increase or decrease would depend entirely on his performance in the upcoming Challenge League. However, not every rookie was as rich as Lin Yi. It had to be known that most of the rookie in the Blue Cloud Pavilion only had a total of 10 to 20 points in the previous 2 rounds. Even the initial points given in the challenge competition segment did not exceed 30 points. Using these points as the gambling capital, if they were not strong enough, or if they did not choose the right opponent, they might lose all these points after a few rounds of the challenge competition. In this way, no matter how low the ranking of the cave abode they were in, they would lose the right to take the initiative to challenge. And if someone came to challenge them, if they still lost, then the other party could normally obtain challenge points in cave abodes, but their points could only be deducted to negative points. Any rookie, once they were reduced to such a point, would basically say goodbye to the 3 great pavilions. This was because this was simply a stain that could not be erased. Even if they could successfully reach the foundation establishment stage in the future, the 3 great pavilions would definitely not accept such a rookie. After all, it was embarrassing to say it out loud. Apart from that, the challenge competition segment was the same as the elixir trial segment. It was a protracted battle that would last for a full 2 months. On every day ending with 3, 6, or 9, every rookie had a chance to issue a challenge and accept a challenge. And if more than one person issued a challenge to the same person, the person who issued the challenge first would obtain the right to challenge, and the challenge party would not be able to refuse. As for the other challengers, their challenge would be deemed invalid, and they could challenge other people. In this way, in the next 2 months, there would be a total of 18 rounds of challenge competition. Although not everyone would participate in every round of the challenge, the assessment points were not only directly related to the final reward for the rookies, but more importantly, it directly affected the evaluation of them by the 3 pavilions. It was related to their future, so it was not an exaggeration to say that the assessment points were their lifeblood. In such an environment, as long as there was a chance to obtain points, no rookie would easily let it go. And the challenge competition segment was the best way to make the competition as intense as possible. Unless they had completely given up hope, the rookies who were lagging behind would definitely not let go of any opportunity to challenge. When that time came, the difficulty of the challenge competition could be imagined. Don't forget, this was not just 1 or 2 rounds. It would last for a full 2 months. Furthermore, other than the challenge competition, they also had to nurture the elixir seeds. Otherwise, even if they did well in the challenge competition, their points would ultimately be dragged down by the withered elixir seeds. When that happened, their points would be deducted instead, and all their hard work would be for naught. Therefore, between the challenge competition and the elixir seeds, everyone had to make a balance. The difference was just more inclined towards the challenge competition, or more inclined towards the elixir seeds. After all, they were not linear. Everyone had a limited amount of vital energy. Once it was used up, they would need to spend a long time to recover. Chapter 3764. How to maximize the benefits was definitely a skill that required careful consideration. If not, no matter how strong one was, it would be useless. There would be no benefits, and it would be impossible for one to have the last laugh. However, while the other rookies needed to ponder over this problem, Lin Yi and his lackeys did not have such worries. To them, the spirit herb seeds had been entrusted to Lin Yi, so the following mission was to do their best to deal with the challenge. They could go all out without any qualms. This was much better than the other rookies. After Hu Yunfeng explained the rules in detail, she allowed the rookies from the 3 pavilions to go back and prepare. As today was the 19th, it happened to be the day of the challenge. Therefore, the first round of the challenge would officially begin in the afternoon. There was not much time left for the rookies to prepare. After Hu Yunfeng finished her announcement, the rookies did not disperse. They gathered in groups of 2s and 3s to discuss countermeasures. After all, 3 was better than 1. If they were to go back alone and work behind closed doors, they might end up digging their own graves. And in such a group discussion, even if they were unable to confide in each other due to their competitive relationship, they would still be able to gain something. At the very least, they would not be left alone. The rules of this challenge are a little strange. I can't understand it. Xiao Honkai scratched her head in confusion as she said to Senior Brother Bitter and Lin Yi. At the side, Xiao Ran nodded in agreement. Indeed, a little. Normally speaking, this kind of challenge is simple and direct. You just do your best to challenge as high a position as you can, and it won't be like this, where there are all sorts of restrictions that prevent people from going all out. Indeed, for the few of them, they did not need to worry about the matter of nurturing the spirit herb seeds like others. They already had a lot of worries, but even if it was just to deal with the challenge, there were still many tricks to the rules. It was not as simple and crude as in the past. For example, the challenge was 2 months long. Even if they did not have to worry about the supply of chi to the spirit herb seeds, they still had to allocate the points reasonably. If they were to overexert themselves at the beginning, it would be useless even if they temporarily obtained points. They would still lose due to a lack of strength later on. They might even lose more. Another example was that according to the challenge's rules, it was not that the higher the cave abode ranking, the better it was. It was true that obtaining a better cave abode could aid cultivation, and even nurturing the spirit herb seeds could benefit from it. But the problem was that this also meant a greater risk. Once they lost the challenge, the points they would lose would be much higher than those newcomers who had entered the cave abodes of inferior quality. For a newcomer like Xiao Ran, who was in the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain, although at first glance it looked very impressive, the cave abode was good, and the spiritual chi was enough to give him an advantage. Moreover, under this kind of rule, his initial points were only the points accumulated in the first 2 assessment rounds. Other than that, in this round, they would receive an additional 15 points corresponding to the first cave at the foot of the mountain, which was higher than all the other 14 caves. Everything seemed to be very beautiful, but this was just the surface. In fact, in terms of the announced rules of the challenge, Xiao Ran, who was in the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain, was definitely the most disadvantaged one among the 15 people. Not to mention that he would have to hand over all 15 points if he lost. The most crucial and fatal point was that, according to the rule that only those with a lower rank could challenge those with a higher rank, he had no right to challenge anyone. Although the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain and the 15 challenge points were definitely the most important rewards in this round of the challenge, and there would definitely be newcomers who could not help but challenge him, the crux of the problem was that, whether or not to issue a challenge and when to issue a challenge, these were all decided by these competitors. If the others had figured out this rule and recognized the potential disadvantage represented by the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain and arranged for it to be the final round 2 months later, then Xiao Ran would really cry himself to death. If there were no newcomers who took the initiative to challenge him in the first and middle stages, no matter how hard he worked, no matter how outstanding his strength was, it would all be in vain. He could only obediently stay in the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain, unable to do anything. On the other hand, Ming Tong, who was in the last cave abode at the foot of the mountain, might have the worst cave abode, but in fact, he had a huge advantage. He could take the initiative to challenge any newcomer in the Blue Cloud Pavilion, and at the same time, he could follow his own wishes and rhythm to maximize the points he earned in this round. To give a simple example, if he had absolute confidence in his own strength, then in the following 18 rounds, he could completely bide his time in the first 4 rounds. That way, no one could challenge him, and he would be in an absolutely safe position. And in the following 14 rounds, starting from the 14th cave abode at the foot of the mountain, he would challenge one person in each round, all the way until the final round, where he would challenge the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain. As such, if he could win all of them, then he would be able to obtain a stable number of points in each round, and it would only increase in the later rounds. Challenging the 14th cave abode at the foot of the mountain would give him 2 challenge points. The 13th cave abode at the foot of the mountain would give him 3 challenge points, all the way until the 15th cave abode at the foot of the mountain would give him a total of 119 challenge points. This was the challenge round. Putting aside the fact that other people would take the initiative to challenge him and give him points, in theory, the maximum number of points one could obtain would be much higher than the 3 assessment rounds that had already been completed or were in progress. It should not be forgotten that even Lin Yi, who had obtained full marks in the previous 2 rounds, only had a total of 105 points. He was still quite a distance away from the theoretical full marks for this round of the challenge round. And if other newcomers took the initiative to challenge him and give him points during this process, then the final number of points he could obtain would be even higher. Of course, this full marks was only in theory. After all, the difference in strength between newcomers was not too big, unless it was an expert at the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment realm like Lin Yi, who had deliberately hidden his strength. It was extremely difficult for other newcomers in the Blue Cloud Pavilion to win all their matches. And even for an expert in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm like Ming Tong, who had already successfully built his foundation, it was still quite difficult. Chapter 3765. However, even though that was the case, Ming Tong, the owner of Cave Mansion number 15 at the foot of the mountain, was indeed in the most advantageous position in the next round of the challenge. There was no doubt about this. Other than him, it was impossible for anyone else to obtain a theoretical full score of 119 points. It would only be lower than this, not higher. This was a congenital advantage, and no amount of effort could change it. So, from this point of view, on the first day he came to the Welcome Pavilion, Lin Yi snatched his cave mansion number 1 at the foot of the mountain and gave him the worst cave mansion number 15 at the foot of the mountain. In a sense, Lin Yi had helped him. After all, at that time, no one would have thought that the challenge would have such a rule. Facing Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongcai's complaints and confusion, the bitter senior brother analyzed, in fact, the purpose of the challenge rules is very obvious. It is to encourage the newcomers to fight with everyone else as much as possible. Only then can they hope to obtain as many points as possible. This way, they can see the potential and shortcomings of each newcomer to the greatest extent. The reflected points will also have reference value. That's right. If you blindly pursue a high ranking, even if the challenge succeeds, it will be useless. After getting 15 points, you can only be like Xiao Ran now. You can't take the initiative to challenge and can only deal with the challenges. You will be in a completely passive position. This is very embarrassing. Instead, it is better to start from a low ranking and challenge one by one. This way, you can obtain more points. Lin Yi agreed. When Xiao Hongcai heard this, he finally figured out something. He suddenly realized something and said, in that case, people like us, who are in the lower ranking cave dwellings from the beginning, have an advantage. He was in Cave Mansion number 13 at the foot of the mountain. Except for Lin Yi in Cave Mansion number 14 and Ming Tong in Cave Mansion number 15. His position was indeed more advantageous than other Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers. That's right. You just have to challenge one cave mansion at a time. With your current strength, you should still have a great chance to get a lot of points. Lin Yi nodded. Hee, I didn't expect our rotten cave mansion to have such benefits. It seems that the previous month was not in vain. Xiao Hongcai couldn't help but laugh. To newcomers who lacked cultivation resources like spirit jades, it was not easy to deal with them. The quality of a cave abode was crucial, especially for a newcomer like Xiao Hongcai, whose initial strength was not very outstanding. If not for Lin Yi's care, it would have been impossible for him to reach his current position, which was only a step away from foundation establishment. He could only sink into the bottom of the newcomers. If he did not have any other opportunities, he might not have any future in this life. However, with Xiao Hongcai's current strength, it was impossible for her to defeat him. Even if he hadn't successfully established his foundation, his strength was enough to rank in the top 5 among all the rookies in Blue Cloud Pavilion. Coupled with this extremely advantageous starting position, after formulating a challenge plan, there was indeed a high chance that he could earn a lot of points. On the other hand, although Xiao Ran's strength was above Xiao Hongcai's, he was placed in the most awkward position in Cave Mansion number 1 at the foot of the mountain. If there was no big turnaround, it would be very difficult for him to make any progress. Thinking of Xiao Ran's current awkward situation, everyone was momentarily at a loss for words. When Lin Yi gave him the Cave Mansion number 1 at the foot of the mountain, his original intention was to support his own people, and in the past month, Xiao Ran had indeed benefited a lot from it. According to Lin Yi's estimation, looking at the entire 3 major pavilions, apart from the 4 who had successfully established their foundation establishment, Xiao Ran was definitely one of the few remaining rookies who were closest to establishing their foundation establishment. Moreover, his strength was profound, not the least bit inferior to the few outstanding people in Soaring Sky Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion. Once he succeeded in establishing his foundation establishment, even an expert like Ming Tong, who had established his foundation establishment earlier than him, might not be his match. However, no one had expected that. Lin Yi's well-intentioned decision would instead put Xiao Ran in such an awkward situation. Of course, this kind of thing could not be blamed on Lin Yi. Even Xiao Ran, the person involved, only had gratitude and worship for him, and never had any resentment for doing bad things with good intentions. It could only be said that fate made fools of people. The current situation was also unexpected. Lin Yi pondered for a moment. Suddenly, he suggested, "How about this, Xiao Ran? I'll exchange cave mansions with you. This way, you will be in cave mansion number 14 at the foot of the mountain, which will be in a more advantageous position like Honkai. It will be convenient for you to compete for challenge points." As soon as these words came out, senior brother Ku Bai and the others were suddenly shocked, especially Xiao Ran, who was suddenly moved. Absolutely not. Boss Lin Yi, it's rare for you to have such a high score before. It's a great opportunity for you to advance triumphantly and leave a deep impression on the higher-ups of the 3 pavilions. It's a great opportunity for you to pave the way for your future development. If you give up this opportunity for me, I can't afford it. After coming to his senses, Xiao Ran hurriedly refused. Lin Yi had a god-level appearance of full marks in the previous 2 rounds. If he could maintain this rhythm, then not only in Blue Cloud Pavilion, but also in Soaring Sky Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion, he would definitely be worthy of being the #1 newcomer. In the future, if he entered Blue Cloud Pavilion with such qualifications, he would definitely be recognized by the higher-ups and elders. In the future, it would not be a problem for him to soar into the sky. However, if he exchanged cave abodes with Xiao Ran now and took the initiative to jump into the pit of cave abode #1 at the foot of the mountain, it would be very difficult for him to perform in the following rounds of the challenge. If no other newcomers came to challenge him, it would be useless no matter how strong he was. He could only watch helplessly as his competitor, Ming Tong, plunder points wantonly, and he would be powerless to do anything about it. It should not be forgotten that although Lin Yi had accumulated a lot of advantages in the previous 2 rounds, Ming Tong had the help of Ming Jueguang and the others after all. His performance was not bad either, and he was only 33 points behind Lin Yi. In this round of the challenge, the theoretical full marks were 119 points. Once Lin Yi fell into the pit of cave abode #1 at the foot of the mountain and was unable to extricate himself, he would almost certainly be overtaken by Ming Tong, and there would even be a big gap because of this. In this way, the full marks he had obtained in the previous 2 segments would all be for naught. After all, the higher-ups and elders only looked at the final points and would not carefully analyze the performance of each round. At that time, the first place in Blue Cloud Pavilion was very likely to be Ming Tong, and Lin Yi could only settle for second place at most. If that happened, he, Xiao Ran, would become a sinner for all eternity. Therefore, although he was very touched by Lin Yi's suggestion, he would never agree to it. Chapter 3766. Speaking of which, Xiao Ran was the same as Lin Yi. They were both rookies who were very close to him. Lin Yi took the initiative to propose to exchange caves with Xiao Ran. For him, as a senior brother, it was not appropriate to say such a thing. After all, it was likely to disappoint Xiao Ran. However, he had to say it because there was no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. The higher-ups of the 3 pavilions would only pay attention to the #1 rookies. Other than that, it did not matter how many second or third places one obtained. If Ming Tong won first place in this newcomer assessment under such a good situation, it would be a painful loss. For their small group, it would be a great loss. For Xiao Ran alone, sacrificing the first place that Lin Yi had almost obtained was obviously not worth the loss. Forced to say so by his senior brother, Xiao Ran did not complain. Instead, he nodded and said, "That's right. Boss Lin Yi, as our pillar of support, you must put the overall situation first. You must not destroy your own great wall for me. Otherwise, I will not be able to live in peace for the rest of my life." Among them, the only one who did not speak was Qiao Honkai. After all, Xiao Ran was also his brother. If Lin Yi did this for Xiao Ran, he could not say much. However, From his expression at the moment, he did not agree with Lin Yi's actions. It was good for the boss to be loyal, but if he was too loyal, he would take the initiative to fall into the trap and benefit a trash like Meng Tong. Just thinking about that scene made him extremely unhappy. Unexpectedly, Lin Yi smiled and said, "You guys are wrong. In fact, even if I exchange caves with Xiao Ran, Meng Tong has no possibility of surpassing me. Believe me, it is absolutely impossible." Huh. Xiao Ran and the senior brother couldn't help but look at each other. However, although the few of them were puzzled, it was indeed as Lin Yi had said. Even if he were to change to the number 1 cave abode at the foot of the mountain, it was still impossible for Meng Tong to surpass him. At least, it was absolutely impossible in the first 4 rounds of assessment. First of all, Lin Yi had accumulated 105 points in the previous 2 rounds. In addition to the 15 points corresponding to cave abode number 1 at the foot of the mountain, it meant that even if no newcomers challenged him in this round, he could at least maintain a high score of 120 points. With his hidden peak early-stage foundation establishment strength, including Meng Tong, who was an early-stage foundation establishment expert, any clear Cloud Pavilion newcomer would be crushed by him. In other words, no matter who took the initiative to challenge him, they would only give him free points, and his points would only increase, not decrease. On the other hand, Meng Tong had 72 points in the previous 2 rounds, adding the corresponding point for Cave Abode No. 15 at the foot of the mountain. His initial points for the challenge round were 73 points. And even if he followed the rule of maximizing points, all the way from Cave Abode number 14 at the foot of the mountain to Cave Abode number 2 at the foot of the mountain, and maintained a complete victory, he could only get 104 points at most. Adding the initial points, he had 177 points. If he wisely chose not to challenge Lin Yi, then after the challenge round, he could still lead Lin Yi by 57 points, which was a considerable difference. On the other hand, if he were to challenge Lin Yi on a whim, then not only would he lose 14 points, but he'd also gain 14 points for Lin Yi. He'd only be ahead by 29 points at the end of the day. With Meng Tong's hatred for Lin Yi and all the previous clamors, he would never let go of this rare opportunity. Otherwise, with so many newcomers watching, as the so-called boss of the newcomers, he would have no place to put his face. In addition, with the information provided by Li Zhengming, when the time came, Meng Juiguang and the others might not stop him, because they also wanted to know how strong Lin Yi was. Meng Tong, who was the strongest among the newcomers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, was the best candidate to test Lin Yi. A difference of 29 points. This difference could not be said to be big for Lin Yi. Don't forget that he had chosen all 40 spiritual herb seeds in the trial round. With the innate advantage of the space and the jade pendant, even if he disregarded the seed of the heart-devouring exquisite grass that he had to keep among the remaining 39 spiritual herb seeds, it would not be a problem to cultivate 35 of them. When the time came, even if he deducted the 40 points he had to pay for the 40 spiritual herb seeds, he could still guarantee a net profit of 65 points. This was just a pessimistic estimate, but it was already far enough to surpass the difference of 29 points. In fact, even if Meng Tong tactfully chose to admit defeat and did not directly challenge Lin Yi, his final points from the first 4 rounds of the assessment would still not be as high as Lin Yi's. At that point, Lin Yi would have at least 185 points, while Meng Tong would only have 177. Of course, this point situation did not include Meng Tong's spiritual herb trial round, but it must be known that for the newcomers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, where the spiritual energy in the cave abode was extremely poor, this round was a complete scam. Even if Meng Tong was like the other newcomers and very conservatively only received 10 spiritual herb seeds, he would have to ensure that at least 4 of them were cultivated to break even. Cultivating 5 would only net him a net profit of 40 points. For them, who did not have a cheating artifact like the space and the jade pendant, this was already a pie falling from the sky. As for 6 seeds, it was completely impossible. Therefore, even if Meng Tong optimistically cultivated 6 spiritual herb seeds, his final points from the first 4 rounds of the assessment would only be 184 points, which was still 1 point behind Lin Yi. And this was already the most optimistic estimate for him, while Lin Yi's side was the most pessimistic one. If there were newcomers who did not have eyes and gave him points in the challenge round, or if the spiritual herb seeds were cultivated to survive more, then Lin Yi's points would be even higher than this. In other words, no matter how it was calculated, Lin Yi would always be able to suppress Meng Tong, and he would not give his opponent any chance to overtake him. However, these calculations were only made by Lin Yi himself. Senior brother Ku Bai and the others could not understand even if they racked their brains. After all, they did not know that Lin Yi actually had a magical artifact like the space in the jade pendant, which could guarantee the survival rate of the spiritual herb seeds. Although they could not understand, seeing Lin Yi's confident look, they did not know what to say for a moment. Extraordinary people do extraordinary things. So far, there had been more than 1 or 2 miracles that had happened to Lin Yi. Some things they could not understand, but it did not mean that Lin Yi could not do it. However, Xiaoran still hesitated. But Chapter 3767. At this point, Xiaoran couldn't find a reason to refute, and he couldn't help but feel grateful. He knew that Lin Yi was only saying this to save him face. He was obviously helping him, but he insisted on saying that he needed the number 1 Immortal's Cave at the foot of the mountain. There probably wasn't a second boss in this world who took care of his underlings like this. Then, I'll be thick-skinned and accept it. Xiaoran finally nodded heavily and didn't say anything else. With his reserved and low-key temperament, no matter how much Lin Yi helped him, he wouldn't say it out loud. However, if Lin Yi needed anything in the future, he would definitely be the most proactive one and wouldn't hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. In fact, Xiaoran understood that it was only because he kindly reminded Lin Yi about Lu Taisho during the Heaven Stage trial in the secular world. In fact, with Lin Yi's strength, he didn't need his reminder at all. However, it was just this kind gesture that allowed him to obtain Lin Yi's friendship and come all the way until now. He knew that although Lin Yi didn't show any care during the trial and was still very indifferent when they arrived at Heaven Stage Island, it was most likely because of this that Lin Yi was able to accept him in the end. Similarly, although Lin Yi also took care of Xiao Hongkai, he didn't give him as much benefits. This was something that Xiaoran understood. That's a good brother. Lin Yi smiled and patted his shoulder. After a pause, he said, "You and Hongkai don't need to worry about the spiritual medicine seeds like the others for a period of time. I think you can take this opportunity to prepare to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm. After all, the 2 of you have Foundation Establishment pills in your hands. There's no need to drag this matter for too long." The bitter senior brother nodded in agreement. Junior brother Lin is right. For us cultivators, no matter what rules, the most important thing is still strength. As long as you're strong, everything can be negotiated. Even if you fall behind temporarily, you can still catch up in the future. However, if you're not strong enough, no matter how good the position is, it's useless. So, strength is the way. Breaking through to the Foundation Establishment stage? That's exactly what I'm thinking, Xiao Hongkai said excitedly. To be honest, among them, he was the one who disliked Meng Tong the most. He could only watch helplessly as Meng Tong, this kind of trash, succeeded in building his foundation, while he himself was guarding the building foundation pill, not daring to take it. Needless to say, this kind of feeling was extremely sullen. If he maintained this state, when Meng Tong came to challenge him, he would be facing an early-stage foundation building expert. He, as a heaven-rank great perfection expert, didn't have the power to fight back. When the time came, he would inevitably be defeated by Meng Tong. There was no need to mention that kind of feeling. Just thinking about it made him feel so sullen that he would go crazy. Therefore, he had this plan for a long time. After listening to Lin Yi and senior brother Ku Bai's suggestions, he made up his mind. Regardless of whether he succeeded or not, he had to find an opportunity to attempt it in the near future. If he succeeded, then he would have the power to fight against Meng Tong. However, in comparison, Xiaoran, whose strength and foundation were stronger and deeper than his, seemed a little hesitant. You're right, but without complete confidence, I'm afraid I'll waste this rare building foundation pill. He had already touched the barrier between heaven-rank great perfection and early-stage foundation building. But for something like building a foundation, even with the help of the building foundation pill, there was still a possibility of failure. Moreover, the possibility was not small. With Xiao Ran's temperament of seeking for perfection, unless he was really prepared to the extreme, he wouldn't easily take this step. Although this temperament of yours is a good thing, sometimes it's better to take the initiative to take some risks. But sometimes, it was better to take the initiative to take some risks. After all, how could there be no wind and no danger when cultivating? Even if you fail this time, there's still a next time, right? Linny smiled and explained. In his opinion, Xiao Ran was a very reliable person, and his talent was not bad. In the future, he would definitely become a great person. It was just that this guy was a little too eager for perfection, and sometimes he would become a burden. On the contrary, Xiao Hongkai, who was actually not as confident as he was in breaking through to foundation building, was more courageous to take this step. Although this was a kind of rash in many people's eyes, sometimes it was also a manifestation of a kind of drive. After all, something like cultivation had always been sailing against the current. If one didn't take this step, he might fall behind from then on, and never have the chance to surpass others again. Hearing this, Xiao Ran couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Actually, Lin Yi didn't need to say this. He already knew this principle. In fact, his understanding of himself was much clearer than that of a bystander like Lin Yi. Being steady and low-key was an advantage, but sometimes it seemed to be overcautious, and it became a character weakness. With his current strength, in addition to the foundation building pills he obtained from the Back Mountain trial, the certainty of breaking through to foundation building was not small, about 70%. If it was Xiao Hongkai, there was no need for Lin Yi and senior apprentice brother Ku Bai to remind her. She would already be eager to break through to foundation building, but he was still preparing. In his opinion, 70% certainty was not enough, and he had to wait until he had 80% or even 90% certainty before he was willing to take the risk. It couldn't be said that he was timid. This was completely his personality. He didn't make a move, but when he made a move, he must have absolute certainty. In other times, this wasn't a bad thing. But in the welcoming pavilion where the competition between the newcomers was fierce, it wasn't very suitable. Blindly hesitating like this, even if he originally had an advantage in strength, he would gradually be caught up to, or even surpassed. Under the encouraging gazes of Lin Yi and the others, Xiao Ran finally took a deep breath, nodded, and said in a deep voice, "Okay, I understand." He couldn't always be ridden by trash like Meng Tong. If nothing unexpected happened, he would soon have to face him in the challenge competition. At that time, he definitely couldn't let Linny lose face. 70% certainty was already not small. It was time to take the risk. After all, Lin Yi's enemies were people like Su Lingchong and Meng Jueguang. If even to deal with a small fry like Meng Tong, he still had to force Lin Yi to personally take action, then it would be the negligence of him, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, these little brothers. Lin Yi and senior apprentice brother Ku Bai looked at each other and nodded in relief. As a small group, it was obviously not enough for Lin Yi to be strong alone. Everyone had to be strong and be able to take charge of an area by themselves. That way, in the future, they would have a greater right to speak and crush all the tigers that stood in their way. The few of them decided on a plan and immediately went to look for Meng Jueguang. After all, putting aside the matter of breaking through to foundation building, the matter of exchanging a mortal's cave between the newcomers still required the approval of this senior apprentice brother in charge. Chapter 3768. As the first round of the challenge was about to begin in the afternoon, they were prepared to let Meng Tong challenge Lin Yi as soon as Lin Yi's original position in cave number 14 at the foot of the mountain. After all, this was part of the challenge plan. Moreover, it could test the depth of Lin Yi's strength. It could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. Therefore, even Su Lingchong specially rushed over to support them. Unexpectedly, when the challenge was about to begin, Lin Yi came up with such a trick. I remember that Senior Meng said at the beginning that the Welcome Pavilion allows newcomers to exchange cave residences. Therefore, it shouldn't be a problem for us to do this, right? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and asked. Meng Jueguang and Su Lingchong looked at each other and quickly understood Lin Yi's intention. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that under the rules of the challenge, cave number 1 at the foot of the mountain was definitely the most awkward position. At this time, Lin Yi actually took the initiative to propose an exchange with Xiao Ran. This was clearly showing off. This kid was indeed a pretentious newcomer. He was always thinking of showing off in front of his lackeys. It was like he had a psychotic obsessive-compulsive disorder. Although what you said is correct, now is a special period for the newcomer assessment. It doesn't seem appropriate to let you exchange cave residences at this time, Meng Jueguang said perfunctorily. Although he had already seen through Lin Yi's intention, he was not able to figure out the pros and cons in a short period of time. Therefore, he needed to delay a few words and think about it. Allowing newcomers to exchange cave residences is a rule in the Welcome Pavilion. Do you think that it has to be changed just because of a newcomer assessment at the last minute? Moreover, in the newcomer assessment rules, there is not a single rule that goes against it. What is wrong with what Senior Ming said? Please state clearly. Lin Yi still had a calm expression as he said this, but there was a hint of unquestionable tone in his tone. Even if Meng Jueguang did not agree, Lin Yi still had other ways. As long as he took the initiative to challenge Xiao Ran in the first round in the afternoon, then the two of them would go through the motions and defeat Xiao Ran. At that time, he would still be able to achieve the effect of exchanging cave residences. But in this way, compared to exchanging abodes in advance, for Xiao Ran, there was actually one less round of challenge opportunities, and naturally less 2 points corresponding to abode number 14 at the foot of the mountain. Because if Lin Yi won against him as the owner of the 14th cave, although they would exchange cave residences, it would be a one-sided plunder in terms of points. Lin Yi would be able to get his initial 15 points. On the other hand, he couldn't get Lin Yi's initial 2 points, so from Xiao Ran's point of view, he was at a disadvantage. Of course, Xiao Ran didn't have any complaints about this, because the 2 points he lost didn't benefit anyone but Lin Yi. However, Lin Yi wasn't satisfied with it. Since he had proposed to exchange abodes with Xiao Ran, he didn't think much of the points. These points were useless to him, but to Xiao Ran, it might be very crucial. It was fine if he didn't do it, but since he had decided to do it, he had to do it to the best of his ability. Now, he was fighting for benefits for Xiao Ran. Lin Yi naturally wouldn't ignore it. Lin Yi's performance immediately moved the other rookies present. In order to help his underling out, he was willing to take the initiative to jump into a pit. It was truly rare to see a boss who loved his underling to such an extent. Among the crowd, Li Jingming was especially moved. Thankfully, he had the foresight to rely on boss Lin Yi early. If not, if it were a crappy boss like Ming Tong, he wouldn't even need to take the initiative to jump into a pit. Forcing him to jump into a pit to help him out was more like it. F***K, comparisons were odious, and goods had to be thrown away. He didn't sigh for no reason. After entering the welcoming pavilion for more than a month, he had encountered many such situations. In fact, ever since he took the initiative to get close to Meng Jueguang. Not only did Ming Tong not take care of his underling, he had been scamming him. As he was defeated by Lin Yi in one move on the first day, Ming Tong could only hole up in the crappy cave abode at the foot of the mountain, number 15. As for Li Jingming, because he was taken care of by Meng Jueguang, he occupied the second cave abode at the foot of the mountain. Therefore, Ming Tong had been forcing him to take the initiative to change abodes. He refused, so he had all sorts of resentment and hatred. Then, when he went to the Spirit Jade Hall to mine, Ming Tong had been forcing him to contribute the spirit jades that he had dug out. He refused, so he had all sorts of resentment and hatred. After that, in the trial at the back of the mountain, Ming Tong had even forced him to count the spirit herbs to himself. Even if he had only given one less spirit herb in order to protect his position in the top 10, he had immediately been resentful and hateful. It was fine if he didn't think about him when there were good things, but when it came to bad things, he would be the vanguard to test Lin Yi. It was guaranteed that he would be the one. With all these misdeeds, putting Ming Tong, this idiot, together with Lin Yi was simply a great insult to boss Lin Yi. Even a trash like Ming Tong wanted to be the boss of the newcomers. What kind of rubbish was that? Facing Lin Yi's interrogation, Meng Jueguang looked at Su Lingchong and said, although there is indeed such a rule, what you guys are doing now is also taking advantage of a loophole. As the senior brother in charge of Blue Cloud Pavilion, it is not good for me to make a rash judgment. It just so happens that young Master Su is here. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees things clearly. I believe young Master Su will definitely be able to give a more reasonable and fair answer. I will explain the situation to young Master Su in detail. You just wait here for a while. After saying that, Meng Jueguang no longer paid attention to Lin Yi and the others. He followed Su Lingchong and the others to the side to discuss the matter. Hee, these guys are really sly. Even such a small matter needs to be discussed before giving an answer. How petty. Xiao Hongkai saw that these people were as if they were facing a great enemy. She couldn't help but sneer softly. Xiao Ran said with a smile, they are afraid of boss Lin Yi. I think they are afraid that there is some kind of conspiracy hidden in this. Gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a petty person. What a bunch of people. However, Lin Yi chuckled. It doesn't matter. As long as their intelligence is slightly normal, they will be able to understand that doing this is actually a good thing for them. If they don't even have this bit of intelligence, then there is no need to take them seriously in the future. Jumping clowns are not worth mentioning. When the senior brother saw this scene, he couldn't help but sigh. As the senior brother in charge of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, Meng Jueguang was originally a very powerful person. As the senior brother in charge of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, Meng Jueguang didn't have any status in front of Meng Jueguang. He didn't even have the slightest bit of resistance. Chapter 3769. This Lin Yi junior brother really was like what senior brother Lu said. He was not someone to be trifled with. Sooner or later, he would be like miracle Dr. Zhang Liju, who also came from the common world, soaring into the sky and transforming into a dragon. Su Lingchong and Meng Jueguang went to a secluded corner and asked, Old Meng, do you think that Lin Yi has other intentions for doing this? Although this guy isn't that smart, he wouldn't jump into a pit of his own accord, right? Meng Jueguang frowned and thought for a while. Master Su, I think that Lin Yi does not get any benefits other than buying people's hearts. This is set by the challenge rules. No matter how hard he tries, it's useless. Perhaps he's coveting the 15 initial points in the first cave mansion at the foot of the mountain? Meng Tong suddenly said. Meng Jueguang rolled his eyes at him and couldn't help but scold him. Are you an idiot? Even if you can get 15 points from the beginning, you can't take the initiative to challenge others to get points. You can only wait for others to challenge you. What's the use of guarding these 15 points? However, Su Lingchong was a little hesitant. Didn't you guys say that this guy chose 40 spiritual herb seeds in one go in the alchemy hall? If he changes to the first cave this time, not only will he be able to buy people's hearts and get 15 points, but because people don't want to enter the pit of their own accord, no one will be willing to challenge him in the first 10 rounds. That's right. This way, this guy can save his energy and focus on dealing with the 40 spiritual herb seeds, killing 3 birds with 1 stone. How cunning. Fortunately, young Master Su saw through it. Meng Tong chimed in. After Su Lingchong said that, even Meng Jueguang, who didn't think much of it, started to be more cautious. Li Zhengming saw that and felt that things weren't looking good. If this continued, Lin Yi's plan to exchange with Xiao Ran would probably fall through. After all, the rules were set by people, and Su Lingchong was here. It would only take a few minutes for him to find an explanation to stop him. After pondering for a moment, Li Zhengming suddenly said, Young Master Su, Senior Brother Meng, I have an idea, but I don't know if I should say it. Meng Jueguang and Su Lingchong looked at each other. After all, apart from Meng Tong, Li Zhengming was the newcomer that Su Lingchong valued the most. He immediately nodded and said, Go ahead. It's like this. I think that Lin Yi is overestimating himself. Previously, when he took the initiative to collect the 40 spiritual herb seeds, he was already seeking his own death. With the conditions of our Blue Cloud Pavilion's newcomers, no matter how much effort we put in, we won't be able to defeat him. These 40 spirit medicine seeds are basically all going to wither and die. Lin Yi, this brat, is no exception either. Li Zhengming said eloquently. When Su Lingqiong, Meng Jueguang, and the others heard this, they nodded in agreement. In reality, to guarantee the survival rate of the spiritual herb seeds, it must be in a specially built environment like the spirit medicine nursery. Otherwise, even with their conditions, it was impossible to guarantee the survival rate. Therefore, when Linny said that he would choose all 40 seeds, he had already jumped into a deep pit. He couldn't even get out. After a pause, Li Jingming then continued, therefore, I think that even if we let him exchange abodes with Xiao Ran, it's still impossible to change this result. Moreover, to Boss Ming Tong, this is still a good thing that he couldn't ask for more. What do you mean? The few of them were instantly stunned. Li Zhengming said slowly, in reality, if the normal development continues, Lin A this brat would have dug his own grave in the spiritual herb trial segment. Therefore, as long as Boss Ming Tong follows the plan to win points, he will definitely be able to overtake him. However, if Linny is left at the 14th cave abode at the foot of the mountain, there will be a big variable that can easily ruin things. Meng Jueguang was also an astute person. Li Zhengming's words came to this point. She understood what he meant. Zhengming, are you saying that when the time comes, Linny will probably come and challenge Meng Tong every time Meng Tong challenges someone higher up? Meng Jueguang gasped. Not bad. Li Zhengming nodded. Although Boss Ming Tong is already an early-stage foundation establishment expert, that kid Lin Yi also can't be underestimated. Last time, he was able to withstand a full power strike from a peak early foundation establishment cultivator. Boss Ming Tong's situation isn't too optimistic. What the F***CK are you talking about? Ming Tong was instantly displeased. Lin Yi was his archenemy. This kid Li Zhengming actually dared to say that his situation wasn't optimistic in front of young Master Su. This was practically asking for trouble. You're the one talking nonsense. Meng Jueguang glared at him. Between Ming Tong and Lin Yi, it was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker at a glance. This was something that could be seen by anyone with discerning eyes. Naturally, they wouldn't be so stupid as to deceive themselves. Next, even if they arranged for Ming Tong to fight against Lin Yi, it was only to test the depth of Lin Yi's strength. They never expected him to win. Otherwise, if Lin Yi was so easy to deal with, would they still need to worry about it here? Only then did Ming Tong snort resentfully. In fact, even he himself, who was bursting with confidence after successfully building his foundation, didn't dare to say that he would be able to deal with Lin Yi. He thought that he only had a 30 to 40% chance of winning. Little did he know that, with his meager strength, he didn't even have the slightest chance of winning against Lin Yi. 30 to 40%? Nonsense in your dreams. Zhengming's concern is very reasonable. If every time Ming Tong challenges a higher rank, and Lin Yi immediately challenges him and beats him back to his original position, in the end, Ming Tong won't be able to get any points in this challenge round. Instead, all of it will go to Lin Yi. In this way, these points will even be enough to make up for his loss in the spiritual medicine trial round. Ming Tong won't have any chance to overtake him. Meng Jueguang said in deep thought. For the sake of the managing senior brother's face, he wholeheartedly wanted to kick Lin Yi down from the number 1 position. If he took the initiative to block Ming Tong's promotion path in order to prevent Lin Yi from getting what he wanted, it would obviously be a loss that would outweigh the gain. Not only him, even Su Lingqiong, the outsider, was especially unhappy when he saw Lin Yi's points at the top of the list. In other words, if we take the opportunity to agree to Lin Yi's pretentious request, then we can kick him away and not give him any chance to cause trouble? Su Lingqiong nodded thoughtfully. Young Master Su is wise. That's exactly the reason. Meng Jueguang hurriedly flattered. Anyway, there will be opportunities to test his strength in the challenge round. Why not leave it to the end? At that time, the matter will already be settled. No matter if Ming Tong wins or loses, Lin Yi can only be sullenly stepped on. Since this brat wants to act pretentious, then let him do it. Young Master Su, what do you think? Chapter 3770. After all, Ming Tong was not like Kong Ming Ming. These people were young Master Su's direct subordinates. For people like Meng Jueguang who were full of tricks, Young Master Su still had the idea to take them in. However, for trash like Ming Tong, even if he took the initiative to join him, he would not be interested. Of course, now that it was to deal with Lin Yi, it was a different matter. For him, if he could see Lin Yi being trampled on, it would be a great enjoyment. However, even with his background, it was fine to help Ming Tong once in a while. If he had to bleed in every round of the challenge, it was not only unrealistic, but also unnecessary. After all, Ming Tong's mission was only to test the depth of Lin Yi's strength. If they counted on him to directly kill Lin Yi, even if young Master Su helped him, it could only be said that they were indulging in fantasy. After the few of them reached a consensus, Meng Jueguang immediately turned around and said to Lin Yi, "Since you have made up your mind to exchange abodes with Xiao Ran, and there is indeed such a rule, then as the big senior brother in charge, it will not be good for me to stop you." "All right, I agree to this matter." "All right, then thank you for your understanding, senior brother Meng." Lin Yi smiled faintly. This answer was already within his expectations, and there was nothing surprising about it. Junior brother Lin Yi is too polite. When Meng Jueguang, Su Lingchong, and the others saw Lin Yi's calm and pretentious manner, they could not help but snicker in their hearts. What did it mean to have a simple brain but strong limbs? This Lin Yi was a typical example. Although his strength was not weak, he was helpless against his intelligence. Since you foolishly jumped into the pit, then don't even think about coming out. When the matter is settled, then I'll let Meng Tong weigh you and see how much you're worth. After Meng Jueguang nodded, Lin Yi only needed to report this matter to the welcoming pavilion, and then Lin Yi would be able to exchange cave residences with Xiao Ran. Moreover, in the first round of the challenge in the afternoon, Xiao Ran would be able to take the initiative to challenge others as the owner of cave residence number 14 at the foot of the mountain and compete for challenge points. Time passed in a flash. Afternoon, the rookies of the three pavilions once again gathered in the Welcome Pavilion's main hall, preparing to begin the first round of challenges. Facing this challenge round that was similar to the assessment system of previous years, all the rookies could not help but feel nervous and excited. Although this was the fourth assessment segment, and the rookies should be very used to the assessment's rhythm, this was different from the previous three assessment segments. The first three weren't easy. However, in the end, it was a one-sided assessment. Those with strength could score, and those without strength could not score. There weren't many variables or surprises, but it was different this time. The challenge round was highlighted by competition, a brutal competition between rookies. There were too many variables and accidents in this, and it wasn't something that could be solved with just strength. Planning and luck were important elements. If one didn't prepare a strategy beforehand, it might not be useful even if one was strong. Once one was targeted, one wouldn't even know how they died. Whether to take the initiative to challenge, when to initiate the challenge, and what to do when dealing with the challenge. Should they go all out to obtain points, or should they show weakness to preserve their strength, or even retreat in order to gain room for maneuver? These were the key questions that every rookie present had to consider. If they could not give the most suitable answer, then even if they were stronger than others, they would still end up nursing a grievance in the end. After Hu Yunfeng announced on stage, the first round of the challenge officially began. The rookies of the three pavilions were split into three regions. They carried out the challenge at the same time, but for a moment, the scene was somewhat awkward. None of the rookies from the three pavilions took the initiative to challenge the other rookies. It wasn't surprising that such a scene appeared. In fact, anyone with a bit of brains could figure out the trick behind it. One had to know that according to the rules of the challenge, in every round, every rookie had a chance to initiate a challenge. It was optional, but don't forget that everyone had a chance to be challenged at the same time. This was something that couldn't be avoided. If you were really chosen, you wouldn't be able to escape. As such, a problem arose. Once you took the initiative to challenge someone, regardless of whether you won or lost, it would inevitably consume a large amount of your chi. Even if you were stronger than others, once someone took advantage of your weakness and forced you to accept the challenge, it wouldn't bode well for you. After all, everyone was a rookie. Even if there was a gap between them, it wouldn't be that big. Of course, a freak like Lin Yi was an exception. Therefore, for any newcomer, the most frightening situation was that after they had just challenged someone, they would immediately be taken advantage of by someone else. That would be a huge loss. Therefore, the current stalemate was inevitable. In fact, when the rules were formulated, the upper echelons had already considered such a situation. There were also people who suggested setting up some additional corresponding rules. For example, all challenges had to be reported in writing before the challenge began. Another example was to stipulate that every rookie had the right to be exempted from the second round. In other words, as long as they had taken the initiative to challenge someone before, they could not accept anyone's challenge in this round. This way, they could avoid the awkward situation of being afraid of each other in public. There were many such suggestions. At least, the rules would look more fair and reasonable. Furthermore, it would also protect the rookies. Fists and feet had no eyes. It wasn't rare for casualties to occur during a battle. In fact, in the past, there would be a few deaths every year. And if one was forced to participate in a battle when they weren't in the best condition, the possibility of casualties would only be higher. However, in the Elders' Council, Soaring Pavilion's pavilion master, Shanghai Tianhua, suddenly said something that made everyone shut up. What's the purpose of the rookie assessment? Isn't it to let the rookie with the most potential stand out? If they can't even deal with such a small problem, then what's the point of setting up some protective rules? Even if the rookie stands out, what's the use? Can he be the pillar of the three pavilions? As soon as he said that, the other elders were speechless. With Shanghai Tianhua's monstrous power, even the other big shots of the Elders' Council wouldn't dare to disobey him. In fact, when the welcoming pavilion submitted the assessment rules, Shanghai Tianhua scoffed at it. Chapter 3771. After all, in the world of cultivation, there was no such thing as fairness. Artificially creating a fair environment, but in the end, the people that were selected would have to face a completely unfair and cruel world. Tragedies often occurred in this way. But in the eyes of a powerful figure like Shanghai Tianhua, it was similar to the cruel and primitive competition of 10 dogs that could truly select the most promising newcomers. If 10 puppies were thrown into the cave and killed each other, the last one to survive would definitely be the strongest one. This was the law of nature, cruel and simple, but extremely effective. However, although Shangguan Tianhua felt disdain towards the suggestions of the Council of Elders, as the high and mighty pavilion master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, he could not possibly interfere in every matter, no matter how big or small. Otherwise, others would say that he was stretching his hand too far. The reason why he had spoken up this time was because these people were taking the rules of the trial too seriously. For the mighty Council of Elders to actually spend half a day discussing the rules of the welcoming pavilion, Shangguan Tianhua could not bear to watch any longer. That was why he had spoken up to reprimand them. Of course, this involved all sorts of behind-the-scenes games between the giants. Some people wanted to make a mountain out of a molehill and use this to expand their influence, but Shanghai Tianhua wanted to suppress these signs. There was no need for outsiders to know about all these things. Let's not talk about the games between the Elders Guild's higher-ups, but after Shanghai Tianhua spoke, at least there was no objection to this point. Without the protection of the corresponding rules, how to break this awkward stalemate would be left to the newcomers to solve themselves. Because of all sorts of concerns, the ordinary newcomers did not dare to take the initiative to challenge, but the truly powerful newcomers would definitely not be bound by such a small problem. Otherwise, if no one dared to break the stalemate, then it could only be said that this year's Welcome Pavilion did not have any strong people. At least, there was absolutely no peerless genius like the current Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall, Ramjie. As expected, the awkward stalemate did not last long. In less than half an incense stick of time, it was broken. And the first person to issue a challenge was unexpected, but reasonable. It was the Blue Cloud Pavilion's Meng Tong. Meng Tong was the first to take the stage. His invasive gaze slowly swept across the faces of every Blue Cloud Pavilion rookie. Every rookie that was swept by him would subconsciously shrink their necks, not daring to meet his gaze. This kind of domineering feeling that no one dared to challenge was something that Meng Tong had been dreaming of ever since he entered the Welcome Pavilion, but he had never been able to achieve it. What was being in the limelight? This was truly being in the limelight. Ming Tong couldn't help but let out a proud laugh. He was so arrogant that it was a complete mess. Why is this idiot so arrogant? If Boss Lin Yi wasn't in the number 1 cave abode and couldn't take the initiative to challenge others, would it even be his turn? When there's no tiger in the mountain, the monkey becomes the king. Xiao Honkai cursed. Looking at the entire blue cloud pavilion, there were only 2 people who had the strength to surpass the other rookies. One was Lin Yi. The other was Ming Tong. As for the others like Xiao Ran and Li Jingming, although they had a huge advantage in terms of strength when facing the other Blue Cloud Pavilion rookies, in the end, they were only Heaven Stage Full Circle. Even if they were stronger than other Heaven Stage Full Circle experts, they wouldn't be able to completely crush them. To put it bluntly, the only ones who had the absolute strength to crush the other Blue Cloud Pavilion rookies were Lin Yi and Ming Tong. Because the 2 of them had already successfully built their foundation, they were already completely above these Heaven Stage Full Circle newcomers. They could absolutely crush them one-on-one. That was a matter of course. And now, because Lin Yi had swapped cave abodes with Xiao Ran, he took the initiative to jump into the pit and was unable to extricate himself. Then, the only one who had the capital to be in the limelight was Ming Tong. After all, the strength of an early-stage foundation-building expert was right there. This was a fact that no matter how much Xiao Honkai disliked Ming Tong, it couldn't change. Listening to Xiao Hongcai's complaints, Lin Yi and the others looked at each other and smiled. This guy was at a disadvantage because he couldn't take the initiative to challenge Ming Tong, who had a lower ranking in the cave abodes. Otherwise, with his personality, he might be the first person to jump out and take the initiative to challenge Ming Tong. Let's see who this guy plans to challenge. If I'm not wrong, he should start with the 2 of you. Lin Yi speculated. Sure enough, before Lin Yi finished speaking, Ming Tong on the stage locked onto Xiao Ran, who was beside him, and said loudly with a disdainful and proud expression, "I, Ming Tong from cave abode number 15, challenge Xiao Ran from cave abode number 14. As soon as he said that, the other Blue Cloud Pavilion rookies clearly heaved a sigh of relief. Then, their gloating gazes all focused on Xiao Ran. Although strictly speaking, Ming Tong and them were all in Meng Jueguang's faction, it was precisely because there were too many people in their faction that they didn't receive any benefits or care. Points were related to one's future. Ming Tong wouldn't give up, and neither would they. And if Ming Tong wanted to rise, he would have to step over their corpses in the end. This was unavoidable. However, before being stepped under Ming Tong's feet, being able to see Xiao Ran fall before them was still a delightful scene. Although he was already mentally prepared for this, when it really happened, Xiao Ran was still slightly stunned. Only then did he take a step towards the stage. Don't try too hard. Pay attention to protect yourself. It's not too late to get back at him after you reach Foundation Establishment. There's still a long way to go before the match. If you can't do it, just admit defeat. Lin Yi suddenly reminded him from behind. Although Xiao Ran was very strong, there was still a huge gap between him and an early-stage Foundation Establishment expert like Ming Tong. He had almost no chance of winning. However, Lin Yi wasn't worried that Xiao Ran would be so hot-blooded that he would fight to the death with Ming Tong. What he was worried about now was that Ming Tong would take the opportunity to kill Xiao Ran in the match. The nature of the challenge was actually equivalent to a duel. Although there were some emergency measures, it never avoided life and death. As the saying goes, fists and feet have no eyes. Life and death are fated. This was the natural rule of the arena. Even the welcoming pavilion, which had always been very protective of newcomers, was no exception. Just like the duel between newcomers, the challenge did not have any forbidden moves or other restrictions. Even if the opponent was killed on the stage, there would be no pursuit of any responsibility. However, there was one point. This kind of challenge clearly stated that no weapons could be used. After all, a divine weapon could greatly affect a person's strength. If a Heaven Stage Great Perfection newcomer suddenly took out a powerful divine weapon, it was even possible for him to challenge an early-stage Foundation Establishment expert. This was obviously unreasonable. After all, the welcoming pavilion needed powerful newcomers, not parasites that relied on divine weapons to survive. Chapter 3772. However, even without using weapons, with Ming Tong's current strength, if he really wanted to take the opportunity to kill Xiao Ran, he still had a great deal of confidence. Judging from the hostile position of both parties, the possibility of this happening was more than 90%. Since he couldn't deal with Lin Yi directly, then he would start with his underlings. This was the simplest logic. Listening to Lin Yi's reminder, Xiao Ran's body paused. Then he turned around and smiled. I understand. I will protect myself. After saying that, Xiao Ran walked into the ring with his head held high. He didn't show any signs of nervousness, and his expression was as calm as water. It gave people the feeling that he was more confident than Ming Tong. Damn, this guy can't be like Lin Yi, a person who hides his strength, right? Looking at Xiao Ran's behavior, Ming Tong couldn't help but mutter in his heart. In fact, as Lin Yi thought, Meng Jueguang did give some instructions to Ming Tong beforehand. He told him to kill as much as possible when fighting against the two underlings of Lin Yi, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai. However, looking at the situation before him, Ming Tong couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Although they had been focusing on Lin Yi and ignored the two underlings, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, don't forget that during the trial at the back mountain, they had fought against each other. At that time, Ming Tong hadn't succeeded in building his foundation, and Xiao Ran was exhausted by their numbers. However, his strange and mysterious shadow step left a deep impression on everyone. How could someone with such a body movement technique be an ordinary person? Although Ming Tong had always been arrogant, he wasn't so bad that he couldn't see through people. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made it to where he was today. Walking into the ring, Xiao Ran's expression was as calm as an ancient well. He stared back at Ming Tong without backing down. Although the aura around him was still calm and indifferent, if one were to carefully sense it, they would be able to sense the powerful battle intent hidden within. For a moment, the group of rookies who were gloating at the misfortune of others immediately shut their mouths. Like Ming Tong, they had more or less seen Xiao Ran's strength, at least during the trial at the back mountain. Other than being outnumbered and having to choose to escape, he was not at a disadvantage against them. He wasn't as pathetic as Xiao Hongkai. Xiao Ran was a strong man, and while he wasn't a freak like Lin Yi, he wasn't a weakling that couldn't be done without. This was the consensus between the two. Looking at the stage, Xiao Ran was calm when facing Ming Tong. The rookies vaguely had a feeling that maybe Xiao Ran had no chance of winning. Tisk, you're just a weakling at Heaven's stage great perfection. What are you pretending for? Of all the things you can learn, you have to learn from some idiot who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. But since I'm in a good mood, I can teach you a lesson. Ming Tong suddenly sneered. But it's understandable. Your boss is the king of acting tough among rookies. He had already reacted. So what if Xiao Ran wasn't simple? As long as he hadn't built his foundation, he would never be his match. The only difference was that he had to spend more effort. Before Xiao Ran could speak, Xiao Hongkai couldn't help but jump out to defend him. Rookie Ming, may I ask you, can you add another color on top of black? Adding another color to the pitch black surface, other than black, what else could you do? I'm not well educated, so don't lie to me. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire audience burst into laughter. When Ming Tong reacted, his face instantly turned the color of a pig's liver. I'm not well educated, so don't lie to me. Since you're not well educated, how did you become a heaven stage great perfection? Are you going to say that you can't even recognize words? If it weren't for the fact that he was standing in the ring, Ming Tong would have rushed over and trampled on Xiao Hongkai. When his IQ was reduced to a laughingstock, even if he was an early-stage foundation establishment expert, what use was that? Lin Yi smiled and nodded at Xiao Hongkai. This Xiao Hongkai was still very courageous. He dared to speak his mind at the beginning, and it was the same now. As for Meng Jueguang and the others, they could only hold their foreheads speechlessly. Ming Tong was really useless. Fortunately, they didn't expect this guy to be able to deal with Lin Yi. Otherwise, they would really be blind. Ming Tong was helpless. He could only glare at Xiao Hongkai, then turn to the referee specially sent by the 3 pavilions to supervise the fairness. He suppressed his anger and said, Sir Referee, can we begin? The referee was not a disciple of Blue Cloud Pavilion, but a disciple of Mysterious Pavilion who was specially assigned here to prevent under-the-table manipulation. Seeing this, he smiled nonchalantly and announced, "Both sides are ready. The first round of the newcomer challenge will now begin." Meng Tong immediately laughed sinisterly. The aura of an expert in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm was fully displayed. From the looks of it, he planned to go all out to kill Xiao Ran. He was prepared to kill to vent his anger. After all, there was an absolute suppression in their levels. No matter how powerful Xiao Ran was, facing an expert in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm who was going all out was still quite dangerous. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the odds were against Xiao Ran. However, Meng Tong summoned his monstrous aura. Before he could make a move, Xiao Ran turned to the referee and said 3 words calmly, "I give up, F***CK. Meng Tong almost couldn't catch his breath. His body instantly felt a stab of pain, and he was about to spit out a mouthful of blood. The audience was in an uproar. They looked at each other in disbelief. He acted like an expert for a long time. Not only did he tease Meng Tong, but even the surrounding newcomers were looking forward to it. In the end, he just said, "I give up? Are you F***king kidding me?" This time, not only Meng Tong and the others were stunned, but even Lin Yi and the others did not expect it. Giving up was equivalent to admitting defeat. Xiao Ran never said he would do that. How can this be? Then wouldn't Meng Tong have it easy? Xiao Hongkai was dumbfounded. From his point of view, when facing trash like Meng Tong, even if he was not a match for him, he would definitely not let his opponent have it easy. Even if both sides were injured or even fought to the death, he would not hesitate. If Xiao Ran lost without a fight, how is that any different from surrendering to the enemy? Chapter 37-73. Yes, according to the rules of the challenge, as long as one voluntarily gives up or admits defeat, the opponent cannot attack again. This way, Meng Tong will not have any chance to take advantage of him. But to be able to make such a decision directly, junior brother Zhao's courage is not small. The bitter senior brother also sighed. In a situation where he knew that his strength was not equal, it was obviously not wise to face Meng Tong head-on. But to take the initiative to admit defeat in front of everyone, this required great courage. If he hesitated even a little, perhaps blood would be spilled on the spot. After Xiao Ran finished speaking, everyone in the audience was stunned for a long time. Even the referee from the Mysterious Pavilion was stunned for a long time. Only then did he recover and announce, "Xiao Ran of Cave 14 at the foot of the mountain has forfeited. This battle, Meng Tong of Cave 15 at the foot of the mountain has won." Humph, at least you know what's good for you. Otherwise, I would have long kicked you into minced meat. Meng Tong glared fiercely at Xiao Ran and sneered. Xiao Ran looked at him expressionlessly. Without saying a word, he turned around and walked off the stage. What welcomed him was a wave of boos from the other newcomers below the stage. However, all of a sudden, the hidden battle intent in his body grew stronger. "Wait until after you build your foundation, then come and take care of this guy." Linny smiled and patted his shoulder. "Yes." Xiao Ran nodded heavily. When he looked at Meng Tong on the stage again, his battle intent had already been restrained and once again returned to normal. But Lin Yi, who was familiar with him, knew that the idiot Meng Tong had already been targeted by an extraordinary guy. He did not even need to personally make a move. Perhaps not long after, there would be a brand new Xiao Ran who would challenge this guy. With Xiao Ran's foundation, even if Meng Tong took the lead in building his foundation in these few days, at that time, it would be very difficult to say who would win and who would lose. On the stage, Meng Tong did not come down immediately. According to the challenge rules, with his current position as the owner of Cave Abode number 14 at the foot of the mountain, other than Xiao Ran who was ranked lower, no one else could challenge him. However, he did not come down immediately. Instead, he stretched out a finger and pointed at Xiao Hongkai who was standing beside Lin Yi. "It's your turn next. When the time comes, will you, the lumber waste, also learn to be a coward?" "I'll wait and see." Meng Tong laughed contemptuously and turned to leave the stage. F***ck. This idiot is so arrogant. Does he really think he's invincible just because he's in the early stage of foundation establishment? Just wait and see. Xiao Honkai clenched her fists. He was not Xiao Ran. Even if he knew that it was wiser to retreat in order to advance, even if he knew that retreating was the wiser way to advance, he couldn't take this lying down. Even if he knew he would lose, he would rather fight to the death with Ming Tong. He would never give up. Lin Yi and the bitter senior looked at each other and shook their heads helplessly. With Xiao Hongcai's upright personality, they couldn't persuade him even if they wanted to. But this was good. Letting him fight with Ming Tong, an early-stage foundation establishment expert, this kind of cross-stage combat would be very beneficial for him when he breaks through to foundation establishment. At that time, he just had to be careful not to be killed by Ming Tong. Blue Cloud Pavilion Newcomer Challenge, first round, first match. Although Ming Tong won without a fight, there was at least one thing that was beyond doubt. He did break the awkward deadlock, so that the other newcomers wouldn't be afraid to take the initiative to challenge him just because they were afraid of each other. As expected, a short moment after Ming Tong stepped down from the stage, a newcomer immediately issued a challenge. It was the owner of Cave Number 12. Originally, if it wasn't for the scene that just happened and Ming Tong made a reservation for the next round, Xiao Honkai would definitely be the first to challenge him. But as a result, he really didn't plan to fight this round. After all, no matter how upright his personality was, he wouldn't be stupid enough to foolishly waste his true chi in the next round when he knew he was going to challenge someone stronger than him. That wasn't bravery, it was stupidity. However, the owner of Cave Number 12 was the first to go up the stage. This was more or less out of everyone's expectations. This was because this guy's name was Cha Wu. Although his strength had barely reached the peak of Heaven stage, he was truly a weak newcomer. In the previous 2 rounds, he was the first to leave the stage in the first round, accumulating 1 point. In the second round, he challenged a peak late-stage Heaven stage, accumulating 10 points. In total, he had accumulated a total of 11 points from the 2 rounds, ranking last in the entire Blue Cloud Pavilion. This Cha Wu was called a weakling by others, and it was absolutely a well-deserved reputation. He actually dared to take the initiative to jump out after Ming Tong to issue a challenge. This inexplicable confidence was truly shocking. However, when he announced the party he was going to challenge, the audience suddenly burst into an uproar. Cave Number 12, Cha Wu, challenges Cave Number 1, Lin Yi. Cha Wu looked at Lin Yi below the stage and shouted with full energy. Heh, strange things happen every year, but there are especially many this year. Being challenged in public, Lin Yi couldn't help but raise his eyebrows in surprise. A guy who could only be considered weak even in the peak of Heaven stage actually dared to challenge him. Where did this guy get his courage and boldness from? Originally, according to his judgment, in this kind of one-on-one challenge round, probably only Ming Tong had the guts to challenge him. As long as the others had a little bit of brains, they shouldn't be stupid enough to take the initiative to run into the muzzle. He didn't expect such an accident to happen in the first round. Under everyone's gaze, Lin Yi raised his leg and was about to go up the stage. However, before he went up the stage, he was stopped by Senior Brother Bitter Guy and said a few words. Junior Brother Lin, this is a rare good opportunity to advance by retreating. If you take the initiative to give up this round, you can immediately get Cave Number 12. This position is not only convenient for you to plunder points later, but you can also suppress Ming Tong at the same time, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Senior Brother Bitter Guy said with a face full of excitement. The rules were laid out here. If Lin Yi took the initiative to admit defeat to this weakling, although it sounded a little funny at first, discerning people could understand the meaning behind it. Although he lost 15 challenge points for a moment of forbearance, he gained a room to turn the situation around. With Lin Yi's formidable strength, as long as he was willing, he could completely fight his way up one cave after another. At that time, not to mention a mere 15 points, even earning 100 points would not be a problem. For Lin Yi, who was trapped in Cave Number 1 and unable to extricate himself, this weakling at the bottom of Blue Cloud Pavilion was simply a living bodhisattva who could save him from suffering. Such an opportunity was simply something that could not be asked for at any other time. With regards to senior brother Bitter Guy's suggestion, Lin Yi replied with a smile, did not say anything, and directly walked up the stage. Looking at Lin Yi going up the stage, there didn't seem to be any anger on his face. He didn't show any fighting intent, let alone any killing intent. Chao Wu couldn't help but laugh in his heart. Sure enough, it was just as he expected. Chapter 3774. This fellow, Lin Yi, was indeed powerful enough to make one's hair stand on end, but in order to show off to his lackeys, he foolishly trapped himself in the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain, unable to extricate himself. He had powerful strength, but no place to use it. If this carried on, the so-called number 1 rookie, Lin Yi, would be naturally wasted in the challenge round. If his biggest competitor, Meng Tong, was more cautious and did not take the initiative to challenge him, it was estimated that until the end of the challenge round, no one would take the initiative to give him points. In the end, he could only hold on to his pitiful starting points and end awkwardly. The first cave abode at the foot of the mountain corresponded to 15 starting points. To other rookies, it was quite a lot, but to Lin Yi, who had obtained full marks for the god level in 2 consecutive rounds, it was not even enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. He clearly had the powerful strength to crush everyone else, but he could only survive the entire challenge round in mediocrity. How could a person like Lin Yi, who always wanted to posture and be in the limelight, be willing to accept this? Even if one used their toes to think about it, one would be able to understand the grievance and depression involved. Of course, to Lin Yi, this was a deep pit of grievance and depression, but to the other rookies, it was an excellent opportunity. It all depended on whether they had the courage or not. When the discerning people knew that challenging Lin Yi was courting death, when the discerning people automatically ignored the number 1 rookie who had fallen into his own trap, suddenly a rookie jumped out to challenge him. Furthermore, this rookie's cave abode ranking was very low. What kind of situation would that be? How would Lin Yi react? Courting death? This was just a subconscious first reaction. Once they came to their senses, any normal person would definitely be able to see the opportunity. Lin Yi was naturally no exception. Thinking about it, as long as he took the initiative to lose the first round, he would definitely be able to earn more than 100 points in the following challenges. Who would be willing to miss such an opportunity? Once he missed it, it would be very difficult to have a second chance. Hence, with this line of thought, Chao Wu, who was considered the weakling among the Blue Cloud Pavilion rookies, suddenly realized that his opportunity had come. It had to be known that although it was not difficult for other rookies to think of this, the problem was that they might not have the courage to do so. Because even when they challenged Lin Yi was very sensible and cooperated with them to admit defeat. If they didn't have this strength, they still wouldn't be able to sit firmly in the number 1 cave abode at the foot of the mountain. Not only would they lose the opportunity to challenge. At that time, he would have to spit out the 15 points sooner or later, and it would be meaningless. However, it was meaningless to the other rookies, but for a weakling like Chao Wu, the significance was extraordinary. The reason was very simple. He was weak, and he had only obtained a pitiful 11 points in the first 2 rounds. If he continued to develop like this, it was almost inevitable that he would end up at the bottom of the rankings. Therefore, while the other rookies were still calculating the number of points, he had already sentenced himself to death in advance. Most of the time, a broken pot still needed capital, and this Chao Wu's capital could be said to be blessed by heaven. With his current situation, it was inevitable that he would end up in last place anyway. Now that things had come to this, it was meaningless to care about how many points he had. Instead, he might as well do something that would leave a deep impression on others. When the time came, he might be able to change his fate. For example, right now, when no one dared to challenge the number 1 rookie, Lin Yi, he dared to jump out. In the end, Lin Yi even took the initiative to admit defeat. If this matter were to be spread around, what kind of effect would it have? A person who forced a strong person like Lin Yi to take the initiative to admit defeat. If this unprecedented resume was spread, it would definitely be considered a domineering and cool person. When he entered the Blue Cloud Pavilion, normal people would have to look up to Cha Wu. To put it bluntly, in this challenge, he wasn't afraid that Lin Yi wasn't strong enough. He was afraid that Lin Yi wasn't strong enough. This was because the stronger Lin Yi was, the more this matter would become a brand, and the more Cha Wu would benefit from it. As a rookie, if he wanted to make a name for himself, the rookie assessment wasn't the only way. As long as he was flexible, he could rely on the shoulders of other strong rookies to rise. That was also a good choice. Regardless of the points, he would have the capital to brag about in the future. That was enough. Therefore, taking the initiative to challenge Lin Yi might seem unbelievable to the other rookies, but to Cha Wu, it was a heaven-sent opportunity. As long as Lin Yi's mind was normal like his little brother, Xiao Ran, and knew how to adapt to the circumstances, there would be at least a 90% chance of success. Not only would Lin Yi choose to cooperate with him, but Cha Wu also had another advantage. Before the start of the competition, Meng Jueguang had gathered all the rookies together and told them something. It was an important countermeasure against Lin Yi's group. Including Meng Tong, all 12 rookies did not have any restrictions when competing with each other. However, when facing Lin Yi's group, other than the challenge rules, Meng Jueguang had specially added an internal rule. That was, among the 12 rookies, after any one of them challenged Lin Yi's group, the other 11 were not allowed to challenge that person for a week. Violators would be severely punished. This rule was equivalent to a one-sided attack on Lin Yi's group. The goal was self-evident. It was to encourage the rookies to challenge Lin Yi's group as much as possible. Even if they couldn't kill them, they had to tire them to death. And the rookies who challenged Lin Yi could also obtain sufficient time to rest and recover. With this unspoken rule as a cover, Cha Wu's decision to challenge Lin Yi became even more carefree and unscrupulous. When he successfully made Lin Yi admit defeat and occupy Cave Abode No. 1, the other rookies would not challenge him in a short period of time, be it for the sake of points or the additional unspoken rule of Meng Jueguang. And for him, who aimed to obtain bragging rights, this was enough. Looking at Lin Yi's calm expression after getting on the stage, Cha Wu's suspicions were confirmed. He couldn't help but feel overjoyed. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. Today was a great day for Lin Yi to make a comeback. Moments later, the discussions of the rookies gradually died down. Some of them had already seen through Cha Wu's wishful thinking. While they wrung their hands in envy, they did not have much of a temper. After all, they were not as carefree as Cha Wu, who was first from the bottom. To them, points were not dispensable, but a real lifeblood. Even if they knew that the chances of success were high, they might not risk it. Chapter 3775. With that said, both sides did not move at all, nor did they have the tension of fighting to the death. They just stood on the stage and looked at each other. Seeing Lin Yi's indifferent performance, Cha Wu felt relieved. As he expected, Lin Yi had no intention of making a move. It was obvious that he was just like his underling, Xiao Ran, who was ready to admit defeat. Although there was a 90% chance that Lin Yi would take the initiative to admit defeat, Cha Wu still had some doubts in his heart. What if Lin Yi was stupid and decided to beat him to death? With the disparity in strength, if they really fought, it would really be fatal. Now, if Lin Yi really wanted to make a move, he would have already done so. He would not stand there indifferently and waste time. From the looks of it, this number 1 rookie who loved to show off was probably having a psychological struggle. He could not bring himself to admit defeat in such a short period of time, right? Cha Wu secretly smiled without batting an eyelid. It's fine. As long as you don't make a move, I have all the time in the world to wait for you to admit defeat. He no longer felt any nervousness in his heart. Instead, he felt some regret. He'd heard that the technology in the common world was very advanced, and that there was something called a photographic chicken or something. It was said that you could record the fight and show it to other people. It'd be great if he had something like that in his hands right now. He'd be able to record the scene of Lin Yi admitting defeat, and it'd be something he could brag about later on. Unfortunately, no matter how advanced the technology in the secular world was, it was impossible to transmit it to Heaven Island. Ignoring the fact that there were very few cultivators who could teleport to Heaven Island, even if they had the intention, Those so-called high-tech gadgets could not withstand teleportation. Not only could they not be teleported, even if they were lucky enough to be teleported, it would only become a pile of scrap metal. It was useless. Time slowly passed. The two people on the stage did not show any signs of making a move. This time, not only did the other rookies below the stage become impatient, even the referee could not help but urge both parties, please pay attention to the time. If you do not make a move in 15 minutes, it will be considered as the challenger forfeiting and the challenged wins. Within 15 minutes, if both parties did not make a move, then the challenger had to take the initiative to attack. Otherwise, it would be considered as forfeiting. This was the clear rule of the challenge. After all, who asked you to initiate the challenge? Half an incense stick of time passed by in a flash. Chao Wu finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Seeing that the referee was about to announce the verdict, he hurriedly said, "Sir referee, please wait a moment. This newcomer Lin definitely has something to say." At the same time, Chao Wu couldn't help but blame Linny for being too slow. After hesitating for half an incense stick's time, no matter how much of a psychological struggle he had, he should have finished it by now. How could he continue wasting time like this? How boring. Acting pretentious newbies were so pretentious. Wasn't it just opening his mouth to admit defeat? Was there a need to wait for so long? For a moment, everyone's gaze, including the referee, landed on Lin Yi. Linny smiled faintly and said, "If you insist on saying that, then I really have something to say." Chao Wu heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. It's finally done. I thought that this guy couldn't bring himself to lose face and was going to change his mind. How King terrifying. Unexpectedly, Lin Yi sized him up with a faint smile and said with a teasing look, "Brother Chao Wu, are you sure you don't want to admit defeat? Are you sure you don't want to admit defeat? If so, I'm going to start." Huh? What? What do you mean? Instantly, Chao Wu suspected that he had heard wrongly. He stared at Linny in disbelief for a long time. Coupled with the unexpected uproar below the stage, he finally reacted. Not only did this rascal Lin Yi not admit defeat, he even wanted me to admit defeat? This was King illogical. Was this guy so stupid that he couldn't even figure out the situation? I'm giving you a chance to save yourself. The one who should admit defeat should be you, Lin Yi. How can it be me? If I were to admit defeat, then what the CK is the point of challenging? Do you think I have too many points and want to give them to you? Not only Chao Wu, all the rookies on stage were baffled. Even Meng Jueguang and company were in a daze. Chao Wu's action of taking advantage of a loophole had made Meng Jueguang extremely angry. Although he had strongly encouraged his rookies to challenge Lin Yi and company, for a weakling like Chao Wu to take the initiative to challenge Lin Yi was not to deal with Lin Yi, but to help Lin Yi. Once Lin Yi admitted defeat and switched to cave abode number 12, not only would he create an opportunity for himself, he would also cause great trouble for Meng Tong. Chao Wu's actions were simply a scam. However, to everyone's surprise, Lin Yi did not respond. He did not take the initiative to admit defeat and take the opportunity to dig a hole. Not only did he not grasp such a great opportunity, he foolishly made Chao Wu admit defeat. This could not even be described as stupid. Lin Yi's intelligence was indeed worrisome. Not only Meng Jueguang and company, even senior brother Bitter, Xiao Ran and company were stunned. The principle of retreating to advance was something Lin Yi knew better than the few of them. It did not make sense for him to be unable to see the situation when it was his turn, right? Little did they know that although retreating in order to advance was the best strategy, it was not always necessary to retreat in order to advance. If Lin Yi was in desperate need of points right now, he might have really gone along with the opportunist Chao Wu, but the problem was that he didn't need points at all even if he stayed at the first cave at the foot of the mountain. If that was the case, what was the point of retreating to advance? Lin Yi looked at Chao Wu, who was at a loss, and said with a faint smile, "What do you think? Do you want to admit defeat directly, or do you want to have a serious fight with me? To be honest, my hands and feet are a little itchy now. It's just the right time to move my muscles and bones." What the CK? Are you an idiot? Why don't you seize this opportunity and fight with me? What's the use of earning my 4 points? Do you understand the principle of retreating to advance? The reality was too cruel. Chawu could not help but roar gloomily. With his weak strength, he really did not dare to fight with a freak like Lin Yi. Otherwise, it would be a light punishment for him to injure his muscles and bones. He might even be killed in one move. It was not worth it to lose his life. However, he was not willing to give up just like that, so he could only use this method to remind Lin Yi. Meng Jueguang and the others in the audience suddenly had a black face. Damn it, this guy did not want to live anymore. He was afraid that he could not help Lin Yi out of the trap. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.